Hello, hope everybody's ready. This is our on-site septic system webinar and our training for 2018. If you have any questions, feel free to type them in, or you can text Chris Edwards your questions. And he's not giving me his number. Okay. Oh, so just your people get to ask questions. Okay. Okay. Wow. Okay. Anyway, we will be very flexible with the schedule. We're going to try to break for lunch a little later to help with everybody. And we're going to start with Amber Ballinger. She's going to go over installers. After you take the webinar, you just need to go on to train, do the test, pass it. It's easy, I promise. We'll mail you out all of your information, the packet, disc, and so forth. And if you have any questions, just give our office a call and we'll try to help you out. We're going to start with Miss Amber. You want up here, Amber? You can get up here.
Okay. I'm just going to go over some installer information. So, you know, the present year started April 1st, 2018, and it'll end March 31st, 2019. And then, you know, installers must receive their 6 CEUs by the end of March 31st, 2019 to remain certified. If they don't receive their training by then, they will become expired, effective April 1st, 2019. For expired installers, they're expired for lack of maintenance training, they must obtain the 6 hours to get recertified, and then the 6 hours to get caught up for the year to be in good standing. Installers are never allowed to take the initial tests over again, and they're never deleted from the system unless they have passed away. And this is just the MOA, the updated, the most recent one, and just has the cabinet responsibilities and the health department responsibilities. And then our most recent installer certificate for the installer classes. Our newest sign-in sheet, and it also has my email address and my fax number as well. And these are the installer cards with the new commissioner, Dr. Howard. And then it'll have their name, their certificate, or their certification number, and the expiration date, and the health department they're certified through. And on the back of the cards, they have the number as well. These are just the years past colors that we've used for cards. Last year, or this year, we used green. Next year, we'll use burgundy. And we're going to follow this pattern: green, burgundy, gray, yellow, blue. And this is just the installer letter they get with their cards. On this letter, it just has contact information, their certification type, number, their certification year and expiration date, and then it talks about the approved training requirements, and it also has the KAR website, the district health department they're certified, and then our branch contact information. This is our website, and it's currently still being worked on. Right now, you can still access, like under environmental management branch, our contact information, information about alternate septic systems, environmental forms, septic systems, and wastewater treatment. The training opportunities, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done, but eventually they'll be able to go on and see what options they have. And just a few reminders: installer cards and letters are sent to the local health department that installers are actually certified through originally. For a retention schedule, we like to say at least 5 years to keep track of keep their sign-in sheets for at least 5 years. If installers miss classes, they have other opportunities like CAWA, the KAMC, the Pumper Show, so they have those options as well. If you do want to do a makeup class, we're doing them as requested. We're updating them as requested, so just let our office know what class you'd like to teach, and we can get it updated so you can teach it for a makeup class. And then whenever you have a new installer, just remember to enter them as soon as possible, and you can let me know so that I can send them a card. And then there's all my contact information, my fax number, my extension, my email if you have any questions. That's all. That's it. Does anyone have questions?
Question, when will they have these websites finished?
We don't actually know. We're still working on them, but we don't know exactly for sure when they'll be finished.
When you say we, like, is each department like, are you all working like on your own section and their section?
Yes.
Because they're a mess.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
It's always been easy to refer people to the website full of information, but it's crazy because you can't,
Yeah. We're just now getting access to be able to edit it, and so each department, each branch is working on their own pages.
Why would you change? If it's not
The website.
Well, they actually changed over to a different system, and the person that was in charge of the website for everything, not just our section, but the whole public website, went to another.
Is there any more questions about installers?
And it left.
So we just like to email you if we got a new guy.
Yeah, whenever you get him in the system, or if you need help getting him or getting them in the system, just email me, and then I can get them a card too. Is when I know they're, because I don't know they're new unless I actually go search for it. So
Okay. So we had a couple new guys.
okay, you can just send them me. That's it.
So, yeah. Amber, you're.
Nice job, Aaron.
Yeah.
Thank you. You need it later on.
Yeah.
You're good.
Yes, and Amber has done an excellent job. She's wonderful at taking care of these installers. If you have any questions in reference to installers, please give her a call. Let's see. Okay, we're going to go over to the main presentation. This one is for a complete 6 hours, so your installers can get everything in one fell swoop. So we're going to start, I think we'll start off with Craig.
So I guess out in webinar, if you have any questions, you can type them in.
You could, if you want to Craig's, here and it'll actually show you some questions on this one instead of that one.
So yeah, type them in, or I guess if y'all want to text Chris Edwards, that's fine too. I'm sure he'll be paying attention to his phone. A lot of these slides, this is not groundbreaking new material. A lot of this is review. I'm not going to sit here and try to teach it. You all know all this stuff. A lot of the material, this stuff hopefully creates talking points for you all and your installers. I'm going to try not to read this stuff to you. If we get done before lunch, more power to you. And it doesn't want to go forward. All right. So there's your goals and objectives. One thing I definitely recommend everybody do, I'm sure you already do this, hopefully, go through all this material before you try to teach the class. There are a number of different calculations thrown in here for the newer gray water stuff. We will spend a little time on that, not a whole lot, and some variations of using different systems to get at the same time, as far as beds, lateral lines, so on and so forth. Anyway, you can go through the regs as much as you need to. A lot of installers, I believe, need a reminder of what their obligations actually are, and that's what this section is trying to emphasize for y'all to work with your installers. Going through the KRSs, this is the ones that will be covered in the presentation. The same old blah, blah, blah. This is one that some installers I don't think fully understand as far as how licensed plumbers can actually become a certified installer. They actually can become one automatically in so many words. Again, I'm not going to read this stuff to you all. The certification requirements, and this is going over the probationary certification period. I don't think a lot of installers realize what probationary certification is for them. It's, until they get 5 completed, fully approved systems in. And then the cabinet issues the full certification. Cabinet can't issue that until cabinet's made aware that they've actually done 5 systems, though, that have been approved.
And Craig, I want to say something about this, the
Yeah.
master plumber. You know, I understand that there are plumbers, but you know what? There are probably many master plumbers out there that have no idea, especially young master plumbers, anything about installing a septic system.
I will not disagree with you.
And has that ever been addressed, that regulation, to
Well-
try to get a change, at least if they
Let's see if I can
could
go
have some kind
backwards.
of some
And
kind
I'll
of
go
training or
backwards.
something?
Hang on a second, Ken. Is this keyboard controlling or only that one? So I can't use.
They don't.
I believe the issue, and I want to go back and make sure, is the part that allows that, I don't believe it's KAR, I believe it's KRS. So that's not about us going in and changing a regulation. It's about legislators going in and changing the law. That's not so simple.
Well, you know, years ago, of course, back in the 60s, 70s, early 80s, the majority of the systems were put in by plumbers.
Right. And they were fairly straightforward back then.
And, right, and it's just kind of carried through, I guess, but, you know, these newer plumbers that are coming along, I mean, they have no experience even in their plumbing training to become a plumber.
Well-
Septic systems.
The one good thing, I guess, is once they are certified, then they do have to do the annual training. So they're going to get training. I know it's after the fact, but law says they don't have to take the test to become the installer. We can't change that. I mean, somebody would have to lobby a legislator to change that. Kenny, you'd probably be a good one to do that.
No, I'm too old.
Okay, let's see, I'm not sure, 5 systems. Yeah, once the cabinet's made aware of their 5 completed systems, then they get their full certification within 60 days. Again, cabinet has to know that they've done it. Nobody's mind reader. Let's see. Violations, some of your installers, especially your newer ones, they need to be aware of these violations that could trigger administrative action on them. And it's, of course, this isn't being presented to them to be threatening in any way. We just want them to know these things can happen, and some of them are a shall happen, not a could happen. This is a may revoke or suspend. Well, that's not helpful. If they violate the provisions of the chapter or the regs, that's any of them. If they practice fraud or deception to become a certified installer. If they're just plain incompetent to install an on-site sewage system. I don't know how you would define that, but I guess you know it when you see it. If they allow somebody else to use their certification to obtain a permit or to put in a system. And if they're guilty of other unprofessional, dishonorable conduct. So this is where the cabinet may revoke or suspend a certification. Here in another slide or two, it'll touch on the shalls, actions that shall require enforcement action. So in the regulations, it goes over how they apply for the certification, the different levels, who might offer the services, and violations that can lead to the mandatory minimum 6 months probationary period. Just for your all's information, this is not part of the installer's presentation, but there might be some changes in the installer's reg in the future. It'd be nice if we could actually get them into different tiers of installer qualifications, but we'll see if that happens. So the application for the certification, if they want to go become the installer, they have to fill out the application. Even the certified plumbers need to fill out the application. It gives the information as far as the DFS form, 233, and the definitions of the different levels as they currently are. And again, this is from KRS. And going over what the expectations are for those minimal, for the probationary level or minimal knowledge. This is an important one. I don't know if it's applied equally across the state, but hopefully you all are as you get applicants, and each year when they get their certification, they have to show proof of liability insurance. And this is important that your installers are aware of this. They need to carry that. They have to maintain it each year. They need to provide the proof to the health departments when they're renewed each year, and that it's required for all installers. This would also be required once a certified plumber becomes an installer. They would have to show the proof of liability insurance. Then the full level of certification. Again, this is after they've completed their 5 systems, been approved without any problems. Certification is not transferable. It's only valid for the individual person. And this goes over the probationary period. As far as a penalty goes, a minimum 6-month probationary period. So as the health department feels it may be necessary, it can be more than 6 months, but a minimum 6 months for any of these following violations. Any installer that fails inspection on any 2 consecutive systems, which requires the health department to do a follow-up inspection. If an installer backfills a system before the final inspection is conducted and approved. Now, of course, you know, if you're working with an installer and bad weather's coming in and you all agree they can backfill it, that's one thing. This is where an installer purposely is backfilling systems without getting inspected, and you find out this says they shall be put on minimum 6 months probation. If they fail a final inspection on any system, which results in the reconstruction of the system before approval can be given. So if they just screw up the system, it has to be completely redone, then this kicks in. If they fail to place or fail to supervise the placement of any required additional fill soil over an installed system. If they do not call for the final inspection of a system. And if they fail to be present on the site while work is being performed on the system. So all these things are automatic, shall require a minimum 6 months probation. So it's important they realize, you know, these possible penalties. Hopefully that would prevent this from ever happening. Who can assign the probation? It can be assigned to a certified installer by the cabinet or the certified inspector having local jurisdiction, of course. It's important whenever probation is issued on an installer that any stipulations as part of that probation are put in writing. So it's all very clear. There's nothing that's going to happen later that wasn't unexpected. And the health department can put stipulations on the probation. It's not just you're on probation for this amount of time. You can add stipulations. And for other violations, the normal procedure would go into place as far as suspension, revocation, and just again, for your all's information, before those type of proceedings happen, you should have an in-house sit down with the installer and document what was discussed and what decision was agreed upon, if one could be agreed upon, before actually going down the road of doing a real conference. You need to have an in-house. You want to try and resolve it locally as best as possible. Whenever you do any type of administrative action, probation or otherwise, the installer has the right to request an administrative hearing. So whenever you issue the notice of probation, so on and so forth, you need to give them the request for hearing at that time. So if they want to dispute it, so to speak, then they know how to go about that. Talking about the administrative hearings, how they'll be conducted. And this is talking about getting an injunction, you know, of imminent health hazard. The cabinet has to be notified in writing if any administrative action is taken. So if y'all do have a probation period set on an installer and it doesn't go to a conference or hearing, you need to let the cabinet know what the results were so that then they can post it and everybody around the state will know. If you keep it in-house, that installer could go to another county and do work and nobody would know any different. Sections in the component regs that affect installers. Again, a lot of this is things you can talk about. You know the issues in your area. Hopefully this can prompt some discussion with you and your installers and hopefully prevent problems for you down the road. Talking about what the components are, includes but is not limited to your sewage pretreatment units, holding tanks, grease traps, and your pump or dosing tanks, and any extra equipment that needs to be put in those. Your D-boxes and alternating valves, any similar devices. Your piping, fittings, valves, leaching chambers. And instead of doing the Jeopardy this year, I'm sure all of y'all will miss that. This will be the next fun thing for your installers to jump into. Distribution with varying length laterals. What type of distribution can you use varying length laterals? Hopefully your installers will know this. What, buddy?
Hillside,
Hillside, hilltop, whatever.
Top hat.
220, 221, whatever it takes. Installer must maintain to pull a permit. There you go. This ain't gonna be done all at once. This will pop up throughout the presentation. So a little respite for your installers. Depending on how much time you spent with your installers, you can take a break with them. We're not doing that today, of course. Pipings, fittings, and connectors. Again, this is still talking about your components, your non-perforated pipe, gravity flow usage. This is going to basically talk about what is allowed. What type of non-perforated pipe are they allowed to use? If you've had issues with installers bringing in some of the thin-walled flexible pipe, this is a good time to talk to them about it. And just go over how just because somebody low says, yeah, I'll sell you this, that doesn't mean they can use it. So I know that's happened in the past. Talks about the different SDRs and ASTM qualifications for the pipe. Talks about the size of the pipe, and I know some folks don't like this information, but it is in the regs. The non-perforated piping, minimum internal diameter of 4 inches. And then that last sentence, or part of sentence, piping used between D boxes and trenches or beds can be reduced to 2 inches with the use of approved reducer coupler fittings. They can do that as long as they use the right pipe. This has been in there for at least 25 years, if not longer.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Can they use the smaller pipe from the tank to the box?
No, only from the D box to the lateral trenches or beds. I'm glad you didn't ask why. Because
there's not a good reason.
Yeah, there you go.
Did you say
Even though it's,
you
I'm sorry?
can't use the 2 inch from the tank to the distribution
No,
box?
it only, this says only D box to the laterals.
Okay.
So I've been, never mind.
No, I just.
Well, this is gravity flow. Okay, so pressure piping is a different matter. Yeah. This talks about how each standard section of pipe has to be plainly marked. And and again, when they install this stuff, they're supposed to turn the pipe so you all can see it. You can talk to your installers about that if that's been a problem. They shouldn't be covering all the solid pipe before you can inspect it, so you can actually verify the type of pipe. And this just talks, shows them which pipe it is they can use and why the, the crushed pipe is not allowed. Easily deformed. And then your pressure usage pipe. And this talks about the minimum type of pipe or strength of it, 160 PSI. And how it can be used in all the applications listed. and then it shows how that's 220 PSI. Now that's a 4-inch line, which more than likely is not going to be used for pressure, but it's just an example showing the PSI. It could be if they really needed to. That was more than likely a gravity flow scenario. So what type of pipe and when to use it? And again, your installers might chime in on other ideas that they have on different types of pipe, stronger pipe that they find works better in certain situations, such as going under a driveway. Carry effluent from the tank to the D-box, and you might remind them if they're doing gravel beds or laterals that the solid pipe needs to go in about 2 feet into the rock lateral before starting the perforated pipe. Get that effluent on into the lateral line. This is a good time to talk to them about that. And the super crush. You can go over the perforated pipe with them. And of course it's a different quality of pipe, not as thick or as rigid. Talking about how it has to be marked. And it has to have the line on the perforated pipe so that everybody knows which way to turn it, so that the holes are then in the right direction. They actually can use, for perforated pipe, a minimum diameter of 2 inches. I've never seen it done, but they can.
Material.
Right, I haven't either. So it's 4 inches. It's 4 inches for 25 plus years. It's 4 inches, but reg says it can be a minimum of 2. And then it gives the standard for the hole placement for 2 and 3 inch diameter perforated
Same
pipe.
sizing, same system sizing with 2.
Yeah, yeah. The lateral line sizing would still be the same for this use for gravity for a rock system. Just instead of 4-inch perforated pipe and everything, you could have 2 or 3 inch. I've never seen it used. It's not common on the market, but here are the regs if somebody needed to know. And this lets them know the minimum hole size and how the holes will be placed on that smaller diameter pipe. If y'all ever see that type pipe and you're not sure, you can always call one of us, call the Frankfurt office, whatever, or look in the regs. And then the 4-inch pipe, which I think is what we're all used to.
Do you think that maybe that's referring maybe to like a low pressure system or something like that?
It could, but this is gravity usage.
Okay.
Yeah, the pressure usage for even in the lines is a stronger pipe. Yeah. Where the line itself is pressurized, you can always pump to a D box and then gravity out to these type of pipes. But for actual pressure line in a low pressure pipe, it's going to be a different type of pipe. And it'll hit that here in a minute. So it's just showing, how the stripe needs to be placed. If you're having any issues with installers not getting their perforated lines in properly, you can talk to them about this. The different types of round and oval holes. We've had questions about those openings on the right. Those are allowed. I know they're not round like we think of, but they're not. What's not allowed is the slits, and you can talk to your installers about that. And then the different types of the perforated pipe. There's some installers will use the rigid perforated pipe, and that is allowed. And then showing the hole placement inside the pipe itself. So some items that was the components in the on-site regs themselves, some things that affect installers. And hopefully y'all aren't having too many issues with this, but one of the big ones that we still see in areas is the system drawing to get a permit. So you can talk to them about that. The permit's only supposed to be issued to a certified installer. They're not supposed to be sending in homeowners and whoever else. It's supposed to be the certified installer. Damaged tanks will be talked about, the risers we talked about, system inspection requirements we talked about, the installer's affidavit, and the cover soil. So these are things that are going to be going into here. If there's other items in the regs that you need to talk to your installers about, obviously this is your chance to do it while you're having your class. You don't have to only talk about these if there's something else you need to talk to your installers about. So the proposed system drawing, this talks about why it's required, what is required. That last bullet, pretty straightforward. Application for a permit to install. When it's submitted, it has to be accompanied by a detailed drawing of the proposed system or alteration, including all necessary specs and the required permit fees. So if your installers, some installers want to kick back on that, you can show them, this is the regulations. This is why you're required and held to that standard. And just an example of a system drawing. I know some health departments have actually posted a copy of this in their office, and next to it, they'll put an example of a not acceptable drawing. And I'm sure we've all seen those. Basically, it looks like a little stick man and you're lucky if it has numbers around it. And if you need to do that or show your installer, hold up an example of a bad system drawing to get a permit, feel free to do that. It's a good time to work with your installers on that. Napkin drawings, yeah, 2x4 drawings, all kinds, yeah. Site boundary lines are to be shown, location of proposed structures, existing structures, your location of any items on the property that require setbacks, and then of course the sewage disposal system, zoom tight. Grade shots of all the components, size of the septic tank, type of D-box, type of laterals, and the footage. Length and width of your lateral lines, and the setback distances. Permit is to be issued only to the installer. Again, this is by regulation, 902 KR 10110. Of course, or a homeowner, as provided, and it expires 1 year after the date of issuance. Unless you can always grant an extension if it's warranted. Component installation standards. Again, if y'all are having issues within your area and you need to talk to your installers about how they're getting their permits, what they're submitting for their permits, definitely during those last slides, it's time to do it. Septic tanks, other pre-treatment units, dosing tanks, holding tanks, they are to be installed level. The connections are to be watertight. The manufacturer instructions are to be followed, especially for the electrical connections. Any unit showing damage on delivery or in placement shall be replaced. That is a good time to talk to your installers about checking the components once they're delivered to the site and before you even get there. If they allow that tank to be placed in the ground and you show up and it's showing damage and they get upset, that's kind of on them, not on you. And they need to realize that. It's their component, they bought it. They should check it before whoever delivered it drives away. Patching of minor damage does not affect the structural integrity, water tightness, or function may be permitted under the supervision of the inspector. Basically, it's your call if you feel that the damage is so minor that it's not going to affect the component itself. It's your call on whether to accept it or not. And they need to understand that it is the inspector's call. And this just showing some examples of some not acceptable damage. Basically, when you can, on the left there, when the honeycombing is bad enough that the two parts of the two-part tank cannot seal properly, even with the black mastic, that's a problem. And on the right, showing the cracking. When the cracks go all the way through, that's a problem. That's not minor anymore. That's enough to affect the integrity of the tank. Risers, hopefully all your installers have gotten used to having to do the risers. One thing to reiterate to them is the septic tank manhole lid has to be in place, and then the riser lid. It's a two lid requirement with the risers. The riser lid has to be tamper resistant. Lids or covers, precast concrete, cast iron, steel have to be 60 pounds or more and require vertical lift. They can't be a slide off type of lid on a concrete riser. It has to have the lip, it has to be lifted vertically. If you all see problems with components, you can talk to your installers about that, and then you can, any problems you see with components, get hold of one of us, so then we can go work with the manufacturers to hopefully get them corrected. And if installers are having problems, continuous problems with the manufacturer, they can let you know, and then you can work with us, and we'll get out there and work with the manufacturers. Lids or covers, sheet metal, plastic, fiberglass have to be attached by bolts, other suitable fasteners. Just showing how the risers can be attached. And old tanks can be retroed with a riser base. So if your installers aren't aware of that, they can. They're generally put the base of the riser, clean off the top of the concrete tank, put black mastic sealant down, place the base of the riser on, and then attach the riser to that base. So it is possible to retro old tanks. Your risers, these photos are showing how the riser can be mounted directly on top of the tank, and the bottom right is showing how the riser oftentimes is cast right into the concrete top itself. Just showing some different examples. Again, the bottom left, the lid would need to be put back in place so that the two lid setup is in place.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
On the plastic tanks, they just come with the one lid. I've been having to put those safety gauge things in there. Is that appropriate, or should they just have the one lid?
The plastic tanks are supposed to have two lids.
They only come with the one.
Well, let us know what company, where they're coming from. When those plastic tanks are approved, they've been made aware that when their plastic tank is installed in Kentucky, it's going to have a riser on the outlet end, and two lids are going to be required. The manufacturers aren't required to put the riser there. The installer is. Most manufacturers provide the riser for selling points. Plastic tanks, I don't know if they do or not, but if you're seeing that go in and they're not providing the two lids, then let us know.
What about a pump tank?
Pump tank is different, and I don't necessarily agree with it, but the regs don't address pump tank, only septic tank for the two lid.
So you don't have to have a safety lid.
You don't have to, but you certainly can. The problem with pump tanks is a lot of times actually run the pipe, the pressure pipe up into the riser. So yeah, and it's been that way for 25 plus years. So the regs don't reflect that requirement.
They have those, what I've been doing is that they've got those cages, those
Yes,
safety cages. I
Yeah.
just have them put those in.
It's a
the
safety
things
net.
in the-
that is better than nothing, but the regs have not addressed those being approved for use in lieu of the lid. So I'm not saying anything against that. It's better than nothing.
See, because I think those, the risers on those plastic tanks, you can't put the lid back down inside of it. There's not,
Right.
it's too small. So the lid that goes on the tank actually goes on.
There is a way around it. I know some of the riser manufacturers, one of their rings that can go right at the base can actually accommodate a concrete lid in there, and then the riser continues up, and then the riser lid is there. So there is a way to do it. Just the tank manufacturers aren't the ones responsible for doing that. So that's really almost where you'd have to tell the installer, look, the tank's fine, the riser's good, but you got to get another lid below the riser lid. And they can do it with one of those cast-in concrete lid rings that go in.
Polylock risers, they have the thing where you can put the safety lid anywhere in the riser assembly. But like the Infiltrator, their risers, they have like a quick snap riser that there's a safety lid that originally came with them, won't fit them. So that's when they use that netting or that orange net jump.
So what, you said Polylock
Mhm.
has it, the safety?
Yeah, if you go back and
riser.
slide that green riser.
I can't, hang on.
That's all I see is the infiltrator tanks.
Let's see.
And I don't
The one on the bottom left, or the
So-
bottom right,
Bottom right,
that's a polylock riser.
okay,
And it's what's cast in there, but you can get the starter for the plastic, for the infiltrator tanks, and it's got the safety lid that comes with it, and you can put anywhere in the riser assembly, so if you got a deep tank, you can put the safety lid up top, we can get to it.
so on the infiltrator tanks, you could put in one of these polylock rings with the safety lid as part of that. Okay, so there are ways around it, and that's what we've been trying to tell people. Even though you get a plastic tank, the tank itself can't accommodate the lid with the riser. The accommodation can be made in the riser itself for the
Yeah,
second
they
lid.
just need to, the installer just needs to let wherever they're getting their tank, like Win Nelson or the plumbing outfitter,
Right.
that they need the Kentucky safety lids, and they'll give them to them.
So again, this is a great opportunity in a class to talk to your installers about how to make this work even with plastic tanks. And it can be done, it just takes a little more effort on the installer's part since the manufacturer hasn't built it into their design. So hopefully a good opportunity for everybody to learn something. Some of your installers might already be aware of this, and hopefully they'll chime in with some information. Let's see. Okay, this is talking about the installer's affidavit. The installers are required to submit an installer's affidavit for every system when you go out there to do the inspection. And on that, they have to record all their grade shots. For their excavation work, basically, they're checking their work before you get there to check their work. They're supposed to shoot their grades before they put in the chambers, the rock, et cetera. Yes.
Do they have to shoot repair area? Is that required?
No.
No.
No, this is for the excavation itself. So in the repair area, there's no excavating being done yet. This is
I'm talking when
for,
they come in to pull the permit though.
oh, well, okay.
Would they have to
Lay out a system?
lay out the repair area?
It's not required by our regs, no.
It's not.
If you are in an area, you all, Northern Kentucky Independent, Fayette County Independent, Jefferson County Independent, you all can make requirements more stringent than our regs, but no less stringent. So if y'all are requiring that, that's your all's requirement. And if that is one of your all's requirements, obviously, class is a great time to point that out. That's up to you all. If you're in Fayette, Jefferson, or Northern Kentucky, and you do make more stringent requirements, you're supposed to have it approved by your board and put in writing. So just be careful how you do that. That way you don't get in trouble potentially for going cowboy on people. So the installer's affidavit, it is required. I know a lot of people haven't used it appropriately, but it is required. The only way to not have to do an installer's affidavit is if you go out and do the excavation inspection yourself, which is an extra trip to the field before they put in the chambers or rock into the trenches. You would go out and shoot those grade shots on their excavation work and showing them example. You know, you can talk to your installers about how you want this filled out, how you want them to get it. The best time I always thought was when they got the permit. Hand them one of these with the permit, and then it's their responsibility to hand it back to you when you go out there to do the inspection. And as long as they realize this, there shouldn't be any confusion. And a drawing showing where they shot their grades for the installer's affidavit. It says on the back of the affidavit, I know for me, I didn't care if it was on the back or on a separate piece of paper. I just wanted it. Just put it somewhere. And of course, you keep it in the file. The excavation inspection, this is required if the installer's affidavit is not being used. And that's what it's saying right there. In lieu of the installer's affidavit, the installer has to request an initial inspection be performed. So if they're not giving you installer's affidavits, they need to be calling you to come out and do an extra inspection. And it's shooting the grades and all the excavations, make sure it's in compliance. And one thing about excavation inspection and constructed wetlands is the excavation inspection is actually required. They can't do the installer's affidavit for the wetland cells. You do have to actually, the inspector has to go out and do that extra visit, shoot the grades on that. So that takes a little extra coordination with your installers. The second bullet below there, item B, when you do the excavation inspection on a wetland, the liner for the wetland cell is to be in place before you go out and do that. So the liner should already be there. They shouldn't have to change anything with that wetland cell except add in the fill material. Showing a few examples. So in this example, when you go out to do the initial excavation inspection, you should not do it at the top left. It should occur at the top right. The liner's in place. Bottom left and bottom right, it's too late. So you would end up having 2 inspection visits, the initial excavation inspection at the point the liner's in place, and then the final inspection when everything's actually done. Now the overflow lateral lines for the wetland cell, they could do an installer's affidavit, or you could go ahead and do the excavation inspection while you're out there doing the wetland cell, however you want to work that. Top half of the inspection form is the excavation inspection, and in the noted over on the right side of that, to be performed on all constructed wetland systems. And these are actually required on homeowner installations. The thing that we all love, homeowner installations. You got to hold their hand the whole way through, which includes doing an excavation inspection, not an installer's affidavit for a homeowner. Not that the installers really need that info, but it's good to know.
Hey, Craig,
Yep.
it's an odd thing. We don't really allow homeowners to do their own systems unless they take the test, whatever. But I had a guy that, he was a master plumber. He said, can I do my own? I said, can't stop you. So I told him I would have to do this excavation inspection.
Yeah.
You know, instead of an affidavit. So just to be on the safe side, I guess I've done the right thing there.
I think you did, because he was a master plumber, he could have become a certified installer, but when he would have needed to fill out the paperwork to become the certified installer.
Right.
Or he could do it as a
That's
homeowner,
probably a good-
and that was fine the way you did it. As long as you did the excavation inspection, then everything was done right. That kind of makes sense. Now, one thing about homeowner systems, and again, this is not necessarily for installers class, they're only allowed to pull one homeowner permit once every 5 years. So you don't have somebody out there doing this on the side as a quote unquote homeowner. Installation inspection, certified installer needs to request the inspection so it can be scheduled. The certified installer is to provide direct access to trench bed or cell bottoms to allow accurate shooting of a grade and elevation. You can require them to put in standpipes in your rock laterals so that you can do your grade shots on the bottom of the trenches. And that's what item 3 says, direct access shall be provided to the use of ports, piping, other methods acceptable. So if there's some other method that you will accept, that's your call. You're the certified inspector. But however you deem necessary for them to provide you access to shoot the grades, they need to provide that. Just be consistent however you're going to do it. Examination of system components, all the plants as to type, size, or capacity, proof status, materials, so on and so forth. They need to provide access so you can actually inspect the components. If you have installers covering up tanks, it's your time to work with it. Let them know they need to leave them uncovered so you can actually check inside the tank. And hopefully y'all are checking inside tanks. You can talk to them, that bottom right photo, that big long run of pipe out in midair. Of course, that's not a good way to do it. Hopefully you can talk to your installers about that. The water leveling, hopefully you're not having any problems with installers. They are to provide the water. Even if they're not there, they're supposed to provide you water, leaving you a 5-gallon bucket, whatever. But they're supposed to provide that for you. Testing of the dosing devices, low pressure systems and alarms. Shooting of trench bed, construct a wetland cell, lagoon bottom. Examine the installation of all your lateral lines, perform other necessary examinations. Whatever issues you all might be having with installers or things you want to just reinforce with your installers for your inspections, this is a good time to do it, just so that everybody's on the same page when you show up to do your inspections. Showing some photos of some basic processes that take place. Top left showing grade shots being done through a port going down to the bottom of the trench. The chambers, you can shoot them either on the top of the chamber or alongside the chamber since they're consistently same height. Lagoon fencing. Some areas don't hardly have any lagoons, other areas have a lot of lagoons. So it depends on your area how much you'll need to address this. The fencing is the installer's responsibility. You can reiterate to them, even if they have some agreement with the homeowner, it all comes back to the installer, whoever holds the permit. If something's wrong with that fence, it's coming back to them as far as your inspection goes. You can talk to them about the type of fencing that's allowed, the height, so on and so forth. Talk to them about their cover soil. They are required to take care of that. They are responsible for it. And it talks about the certified installer shall. So this isn't something that can be negotiated. They have to assure the proper backfilling. They have to perform or supervise the finished grading, and they need to call you for the final inspection. Again, if they're not calling for a final inspection, this can go back to those minimum 6-month probation shall kick in if they don't call for the final inspection. So if you have installers that cover and never call, that could be a problem. Here's a new drawing. Not really, it's about 25 plus years old. Just showing how the cover soil needs to be placed over and around and then tapered out upslope off the ends and downslope. If your installers haven't seen this before, then they must be brand new. So, example, this can be an issue when an installer subcontracts out the backfilling or placing cover soil over a system, and deals with homeowners for adding the cover soil. And again, the installer is ultimately responsible. Inspectors aren't to give final approval until all the cover soil issues are completed. Some prohibited practices from 10085. Cutting, filling, otherwise altering the original grade. Basically the area where the system is supposed to go, they're not supposed to go in there and mess with it. Or if they get there and it's obviously been cut, maybe a builder has come in there, change things around, then the installer should stop and call you, the inspector, before putting the system in. That has happened in a big way in some areas in the past. Hopefully you can have a good working relationship with your installers, but let them know that if they see something that looks out of the ordinary, they need to stop and call you. All right, there we go. The area that's marked off for the system, not supposed to be used for stockpiling any kind of material. If it is, again, they need to stop and get hold of it. You shouldn't just move it off the area and then go ahead and put the system in. That's just showing some examples. Area been driven over at bottom right. And just showing different stockpiling of materials around a construction area. Contracts, of course, this is not in regs. This is merely information to share with installers. The use of contracts can be a benefit as far as clearly defining what's expected of an installer and from the homeowner's point of view, and hopefully, help them stay out of problems with unhappy homeowners. And just goes through some of the benefits. You can talk to them about that. Benefits to the homeowner, it's a two-way street. Contracts can protect both parties if they're used. I don't know what it's like in your all's area, but it seems like wherever I go, I'd never see a contract in place. It's just people mad at each other because they said they didn't do this, they said they'd do that. And I'm sure installers have been in those situations. If they get a written contract with the homeowner, it could keep a lot of problems from ever happening. Or at least they'd have something to fall back on and not just verbal stuff. Hopefully, as installers move forward with modern times, maybe they'll actually start using contracts. Everybody else does when they do work, it seems like. Just an example of a contract, very basic. And of course, we're not going to get into telling them how to do a contract. They would need to consult an attorney or a small business type person. So, sum up, certified installer, various legal obligations. In the process of applying for sites, getting the permit to install, and putting the system in, and using written contracts can protect them and the homeowner.
Craig,
Yes.
seems like my guys, all their contracts just says the guarantee to pass inspection, and then they just fall back on us. It seems like a lot of times.
You're their contract.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I guess if that's working. Doesn't seem like a very good contract, but I don't know. You build a house, you have a contract. If I'm spending any amount of money, I want a contract. That's me. So a person that obtains the permit digs the system. Installer. Distribution with all laterals equivalent in length. Equal flow. Contains laundry, hand sink, and bathtub discharge. Yep, gray water. Y'all need to take a little break? Stretch your legs real quick. All right, take 5 out there in webinar land. Come on back. Okay, we're back on. And we did have one question come in during the first session. Let's see, the question was, can a homeowner bring in the installer's drawing if the installer is unable to make it into the office on a particular day?
No.
So basically, can the homeowner get the permit for the installer? This is not, can the homeowner get a permit? Can they get it for the installer? No, the installer has to come in with their own drawing to obtain their own permit. So hopefully that answers the question from Floyd. I assume that's county, not Floyd. Any other questions anybody in webinar land wants to send in before we get started? Okay. Let's see. Okay. Troubleshooting systems. Again, a lot of the material in this part of the presentation is not groundbreaking new information. This is an opportunity for y'all to work with your installers on different situations that you might encounter at times, but this is going to be a good opportunity for installers to share some of their own war stories and how things were done and how they solved some problems. Because of course, not every failing system scenario can be covered in this presentation. But the more information that can be exchanged back and forth between you all and your installers and between the installers themselves, the better chance people are going to learn something. So, troubleshooting systems. Before an installer wants to fix a system or a homeowner wants the system fixed, it helps to have an idea of maybe what's causing the problem, what's making it fail to start with, which means they got to get some information together. That starts, if possible, with the history of the system. They should contact the health department, see if there's records, how old the system is as far as when it was installed, if there is information, the type and size of components, so on and so forth. But all that information can be extremely helpful. That last bullet, documented complaints and corrections, it can even be, doesn't even have to be documented. If the property owner or a neighbor can provide information on how long a problem's been occurring, that can be helpful. Routine servicing records, if they've ever had their tank pumped out. The water usage, that can be one of the first things to get, if possible, either through the property owner or if you have good working relationship with your water companies, if they can provide the last year's water use. A lot of times when troubleshooting systems, it's not about necessarily pinpointing the problem. It's as much about eliminating things that might be the problem. So if you get the water use, it can help you eliminate that as being one of the potential problems. The waste composition, what's going into that system, make sure they aren't putting their air conditioning condensation drip line or their water softener, so on and so forth. Their downspouts. How many occupants are there, which goes into water usage. Any other property owner information as far as the malfunction or damage, how long has it been happening, where is it happening, is it all the time, is it just part of the year, so on and so forth. Talk to them about, just the whole process of a system over time having problems, filling up. The septic tank, they're going to have to find it if it can't be found, although with the risers anymore, that helps. Property owner or installer can uncover the inlet and outlet manholes. Any work being done around the system, then an installer should or a homeowner should do. It's not recommended inspectors do it. Check for the presence, condition of baffles, T's in the tank. Check for visual evidence of leaks. Check for tank damage, such as cracked or broken manhole covers. And just showing some different things being done there. D boxes. Locate and determine installation depth using a tile probe. Determine the lateral line lay. Check elevations of outlets. Check conditions settings of speed levelers. That's a common one. Speed levelers, for whatever reason, fall off inside the D box. And is effluent backflowing into the D box? If it is, there's a good chance the lateral lines are saturated. If it's a rock system, you can probe into the gravel lines and see if they're saturated or see if some of them are bone dry. One thing it's unfortunately seems like it's more common now is in D boxes, the baffles are basically melting away. They're deteriorating until there's no baffle there at all. So that can be part of the problem. Lateral lines, check the depth, width, length, cover soil using your tile probe. See if the lateral lines are on contour. Visually inspect the lateral field area for surfacing effluent, patches of dead grass, bright green patches, and straight pipes, overflow pipes. Another thing as an inspector you can do with the installers, once you locate the lateral lines and you see what depth they're at, you could drop a few auger holes in between the laterals, not near the laterals. You don't want to create a gusher, and see what the soil conditions are where those lines are. And if it's an old system, they might be down deep in some, bad soil. Lateral lines, rock laterals, probe into the rock to see if lines are saturated or dry. On some old systems, I've seen where homeowners convinced they need a new system, go out and probe. You find a few lines that are bone dry and come to find out it was a disconnected or broken pipe further back in the system, and they don't need a new system. May need to probe throughout the length of the individual lateral lines, see if water's even getting out to the far reaches of the lateral lines. Leaching chambers, might have to try and probe next to the chambers to see if the lines are wet or dry. Of course, it's harder with chambers as far as probing to see if they're taking water, since you can't probe right down into them like you can a rock system. You can try and probe next to them. If an installer is going to be there to work with you, they might very carefully dig right next to a chamber, but of course that has to be done very
Greg,
carefully.
what's that top
Yeah.
picture showing there?
Top right,
Yeah.
a bunch of gunk coming out of a leaching chamber. Yeah, I'd say somebody put a whole lot of something through the tank that should never have been there. Or there was no baffle. Who knows? That's just a mess right there. Is there some good information being shared back there? We need.
Okay.
That's just a mess, what that is. That is nasty. It looks like everything in the tank came out to that line. If a system is malfunctioning, again, you might need to check the soil conditions in and around the area. Sometimes it goes back to a site eval was done, you found legitimate soil conditions, but after you did the site eval, and by the time the installer got there to put the system in, the site got altered. And then the system goes in and nobody bothered to stop and say, wait, the site area has been altered. So this goes back to an installer is not supposed to install a system in an area that has been altered. And so again, this falls back to good communication between the inspector and the installer. As you all know, and you can work with your installers about this, a lot of all this comes down to just good communication between an installer and an inspector, trying to make sure everything goes in right. Alterations, additions, component replacements, and component repairs do require a permit from the local health department. Local health department can assist in troubleshooting a system if possible. And a lot of times that's what we end up out there helping to do too, in really, really bad situations. Major causes of system failure. And again, can't touch on every single thing out there. This is just some items. There's some chambers got crushed when the system got covered while it was wet. Never a good idea. The top left there, it looks like a mound that's seeping out. Some major causes: poor siting as far as the soil quality, landscape position, poor design, poor construction, inadequate maintenance, and of course that falls back on the property owner. Hydraulic overloading, high water usage. As we all know, you can have the best system in the world, but if people just run the heck out of water, it's going to end up causing it problems. System damage, as far as heavy traffic or trenching. And again, that last bullet there, give examples of what you have found. I don't know about you all, but some of the classes I've helped out with, installers love to talk and tell their war stories. And this is a good opportunity to talk to them about different failing systems, troubleshooting systems, some experiences they've had to share with each other. It's amazing just how much can be learned just jawing and not going over the regulatory stuff, just the talking. So this is a good opportunity to do that with your installers. Types of failures, of course, there's above ground and the one that we pretty much never really know about, below ground. Not sure if that's a failure or not if it's below ground. Unless it comes out somewhere, and then you're going to have to do a data trace to really determine if it's a true failure or not. An occasional failure, usually related to wet weather or variable water usage. Continuous failure, it's always there. So if effluent is surfacing, you can have a single point line surfacing, and here's some of the reasons it might be doing that: uneven distribution. Seems like that's not overly unusual, especially within a few years of a system going in through frost heave, whatever. An equal flow box can get thrown off. Speed levelers pop off for whatever reason and go back in and readjust them. Trenches not being level, that can be a problem. Hopefully that would be caught between the installer's affidavit or excavation inspection and the final inspection. But if that is the case, it might end up needing a new trench and abandon the old trench. If the system is full, then your effluent ends up surfacing at the lowest line in a hillside system or in in an equal flow system at the line with the least amount of cover soil or the least permeable line. Or it might just pop up in all over the place in an equal flow system. The equal flow systems, you can talk to them about how just putting soil over a wet spot isn't necessarily going to fix the system. That's going to have a problem if it's already full. A lot of time that's like playing whack-a-mole. It's just going to pop up somewhere else, and you're just chasing it around. You're just slapping Band-Aids, on a cut artery. The whole system surfacing occasionally would be due to wet weather, infiltration of surface or groundwater, and this is where diverting water, it's either on the surface or through a curtain drain, can help a lot. During dry weather, if you have intermittent excessive water usage, then they need to go in and check their plumbing, limit their laundry use. Excessive water usage daily, they're going to have to make a decision. They're going to have to decrease their water or increase the system size. There's only so much you can do. If there's an inaccurate soil evaluation, have it reevaluated, put in a new system, or add on to the existing system. Improper installation of system, lack of proper maintenance, system size was inadequate. That might fall into one of these categories where somebody, applied for a 3-bedroom system. They actually put in a 5-bedroom home, and all the bedrooms are being occupied, which you probably see that through water usage anyway, in which case the system size was inadequate from the get-go. Again, the installers can give you a lot of backstory information when they start talking about this stuff. Might have damaged components, tank outlet baffle or T. That second bullet there, or the middle bullet, infiltration of spring water, I know that gets talked about in a lot of places, but I'll be honest, it seems like that's very rarely ever truly what's causing the system to fail, but it is possible.
It's a unicorn.
Yeah, it's kind of the unicorn of failing system problems. And give examples found in your experience. Again, it's a good time to let the installers talk, give their side of things. Sluggish drains or system backup. Causes and diagnosis. The effluent may or may not surface, so if it could simply back up into the property owner's home. It could be a blockage somewhere in the system. Tank could be set too high, so on and so forth. You can go through each of these items and talk to them with your installer. That last bullet, it happens. The tank can be installed backwards without realizing it. Some of these manufacturers, unfortunately, in today's world, can't hire the best of quality of helpers. Sometimes the number, the code, if it's painted on, gets painted on the wrong end of the tank. It's painted on the inlet end. And the tank gets delivered. Whoever delivered the tank assumes the number's on the outlet end. They set the tank, and the tank's now backwards. So it does happen. The homeowner installed it backwards? There you go.
Went through and did all the lateral, checked all the laterals and everything, then I went to the bad.
And component code was on the inlet end or inlet side? Well, it's easily fixed.
It was a 10-piece tank, so we only had a half of it to reseal it.
Okay. Again, blockage or damage, sewer line pipe. Your installers, they can talk more about this. Some of them I know they're using the little cameras to go run through the lines. They can check for blockage doing that. But anyway, you can talk to them about the sluggish drain issues. In this photo, you talk to them, it's notes down here, there's several things wrong, and this is a good time to talk to your installers about this. This looks, well, if it's equal flow, it's obviously a problem, although I don't see a spot for a baffle to go. But if it was equal flow, obviously it would need the baffle. And No levelers.
Yeah. And the hole going into it has no,
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
it's an air gap.
Yeah. So it doesn't backflow.
It's got too many outlets, doesn't it?
It's not too many outlets, depending on how many lines. Anyway, you can talk to your installers about situations like this. System age. If a new system less than a year old is failing, they've got big problems. It seems like it's almost always, excessive water use, or the soil has been damaged, either compacted or it was just bad soil to start with. Something has gone bad wrong with the site. System damage after construction. I've seen all these happen with new systems that go bad. In this case, somebody put the system in, and then after that, they came through and put in their much needed lawn sprinkler and ran the pipe right through the septic system laterals. That'll do it. The swimming pool that goes in above ground, that can do it. Had a call here recently, somebody put a garage in after the system and home was built. System's less than a year old. About a third of the lateral lines are underneath the new garage. So all these things you can talk to your installers about. Older system failure. It could be a change in the wastewater volume or the strength. They change family size, added a garbage disposal. They change the use of the facility. They don't maintain the system. Additional information, the average waste load. Again, this goes back to water usage. Those water use records can be invaluable. The type of water composition, human waste only. The installers know this stuff. You all know this stuff, but the installers, this is information they can share with homeowners. Especially those darn wipes that say septic safe. None of them are. None of them. Again, things that they can talk to homeowners about not putting into systems. And again, this is a good, installers love to chime in on this part and say, yeah, they shouldn't be using powdered detergent, or this type of detergent is horrible. This bleach is terrible. They like to share what they seem to know, which can be good. Some water conservation measures, repair, replace leaky faucets, toilets. This just talks about how that can be detected. Again, the installers can share this then with homeowners. This isn't necessarily for the installers. This is just more info they can share. Environmental measures. And installers don't like to have to do any more work than they have to. However, diverting all surface water away from the system can be very helpful. The downspouts, sump pump discharge, so on and so forth. Again, structures, driveways, pavement, never put over the laterals. Pools. Separating gray water or just the laundry water. So with the new gray water separation, that can be useful for repairing systems. In years past, I think we've all looked at separating gray water off systems that were having problems. Well, now you can also look at separating gray water off altogether. Installers probably aren't real familiar with this yet, so this is a good time to go back over this just to help reiterate how this can be done. Sounds like some areas of the state, the gray water separation has been done a fair amount, but as a whole, I don't think it's really being done much at all throughout the state. So, but it is possible. Permit does have to be obtained. It's new as of 2017. Design installation requirements are new. I'm not going to read all this stuff, but definitely review all this material before going over it with your installers so you can provide the information they need. This is just letting you know where in the regs to find the flow requirement for doing these type systems from table 1, column B, so on and so forth. It says, if they use basically composting toilets and, and then if they use gray water separation, or if they do both, composting toilets and gray water separation. And this gives the table from your regs, the standard, now 110, the 83 for either composting toilets, or if you do gray water separation, then the 55 if they did both. What is the difference between the black water and gray water? Make sure your installers understand the difference. I think it's pretty straightforward as far as toilets and urinals, but the food prep, kitchen sink, garbage disposal, and dishwasher. Basically, your kitchen plumbing fixtures are still considered part of the gray water. Goes through a few sizing examples for your total daily waste flow in the gray water. This can help your installers understand where the sizing is coming from. This is just a straightforward sizing right here, just a standard flush toilets, nothing else being done, where the TDW comes from. Then if they do a composting toilet, but nothing else different is done, then you're using the 83 gallon per bedroom for the primary system. And then if they do regular toilets, but do separate the gray water, then the primary system is sized at the 83 and the gray water is sized at 55. If composting and gray water are done, then the primary system is sized at 55. The gray water is also sized at 55. That's per bedroom. Again, it'd be good to review all that before talking to your installers about it. If y'all ever have any questions about this before you present it, feel free to touch base with us. And this is just a chart kind of laying out what those three examples just showed. No gray water separation. The toilet type is still flush water, then it's just 110 gallons per bedroom per day. So that's a standard setup. If you have a water flush toilet and you do gray water separation, then the primary system's at 83, gray water's at 55 per bedroom, and so on and so forth. Sizing the residential gray water systems, that's what that was just going through. Gray water shall be separated from the main house sewer if you're doing a gray water separation. Residential gray water system shall be installed according to the results of the site eval. So if the gray water area is in somewhere totally different than your primary system, you're going to have to do the evaluation over in that area also. Septic tank not required for the gray water system. A D-box, like we're used to, is not required. It can still be used, but it's not required. 12-inch separation is allowed for the gray water area. Cover over this gray water area just has to be done in a way that prevents ponding or surfacing of gray water. A valve is being installed to divert the gray water back to the primary system in case there's ever a problem with the gray water area. They could send it back to the other part of the system while they fix the gray water area. There has to be 100% repair area for the gray water area, separate from the primary system repair area. And the gray water area still has to meet setbacks. Talking about what the type of wastewater the gray water area is designed for: bathing, showering, clothes laundry, laundry sinks. It is not to contain the following, and it cannot be applied directly to the surface of the ground or above grade. It has to be below final grade. The sizing of the absorption area for a gray water area is based on 55 gallons per bedroom per day and the application rate in table 3. And this will go through a few sizing calculations here in just a minute. If you're only doing laundry gray water, it's still done the same as the old way, 15% of the TDW, but now it uses the application rate, not linear feet per gallon, and it'll show an example here in just a minute.
Don't you think it's setting the gray water system up to fail without using a tank?
Not necessarily, no. In fact, going into being told to do this by the legislature, we looked at a lot of states, mostly out west, who had done this. And what we found over and over is they said, do not send gray water into any holding vessel that's going to hold it for more than 24 hours, because the gray water, when it's first generated out of the home, it's not septic, it's just dirty water. But if you hold it in any vessel, tank, whatever, for more than 24 hours, it's going to go septic and it's going to get worse. The sooner you can get it out to the soil, actually, the better for gray water. So that's why no tank was required. Gray water on a new system installation, permitting laundry waste flow separation. Again, soils group, same as it always been. Soils group 1 through 3, you can give the 15% reduction off the primary system. If it's a group 4 primary system, they get no reduction. Again, gray water is sized at 55 gallons a day per bedroom, and then use the application rate to size the gray water system. We're all used to doing the linear feet per gallon, which is the second column of our soils chart. The application rate is actually the first column of our soils chart. And we'll give some examples. So for a 3-bedroom gray water system in group 3 soil, you have 3 bedrooms, the 55 gallon per day for the gray water system gives us 165 gallon per day. For the group 3 PS soil, the application rate is 0.37 square feet per gallon. So 165 divided by 0.37, they need a 446 square foot area, soil absorption area for the gray water system. So the absorption area is the bottom of the trench or bed area, not the sidewalls. So they need a total of 446. So it could be 10 foot by 45 foot. It could be 2 foot by however long that would be. Just the total amount.
225.
Thank you.
223.
223, all right. So however long that length by width is of the bottom of the trench or bed, that would be your soil absorption area. And again, you still have to count for the black water system over in the primary system, black water usage over in the primary system. There's an example of our good old alternating valve that we've all seen for years. That's not the only type they can use, but that is a type. It's just showing where the valve can be, although in talking to some installers, a lot of them said the best place for the valve is right back here. Easy to get to, it's protected, right there underneath the home in the crawl space or in the basement, but that would be the best place for it. Again, your installers, I mean, you all know how they are. A lot of them can be very innovative and forward thinking on how to work with this stuff. Some of them not so much.
Your valve, so you could go back into the septic, into the tank if you needed, just based on that picture there? Or does it matter?
I think it should, but somebody else said it shouldn't.
But if you put it under the house, you've got to allow for a footer.
You're right. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Coming out,
you're right.
You're gonna have two exits under the footer. And
Absolutely.
you've got to make sure that the plumber knows that.
Well, yeah, it's going to have 2 exits anyway, no matter where the valve goes, because that line's going out. So this is, again, this adds more to the whole picture of working with the plumbing part of it to do this gray water separation. It's 2 different plumbing systems for the home. So, but as far as the valve and where it goes back in,
It is what's not been rigged, it has to go into the tank. No matter.
I don't think it's in red.
All
right. Laundry water system sizing. It's still the same as it used to be, the 15% of TDW, but where we used to use the linear feet per gallon, we now use the application rate, just like we do for the gray water. On these doors. So 3-bedroom example, times 110 gallon per day, 330 gallon per day TDW. We're going to take 15% of that if we only do a laundry. So that would give us 50 gallons of laundry TDW. And for our group 3 PS soil, divided by the 0.37 square feet per gallon, and that gives us 135 square foot absorption area for the laundry. So it could be 12 foot by 11.5 or 10 by 13.5, or however that footprint works out for the soil absorption area. 3 foot by whatever, if you want to just put in 3 foot rock or chambers. All right. Installer submits a what with grade shots to obtain a permit? A drawing. A what? A bribe, yeah. An envelope. Person that performs the site evaluation and issues the permit. Well, I hope so. It's the inspector. Installed on tank outlet to remove additional fines. Some of the topics we're going to touch on for on-site options, septic tank and effluent filter options, dosing tank options, aerobic treatment unit options, constructed wetland option, trench barrier material, distribution options. Again, this is a variety of topics. When y'all are working with your installers in these classes, add on whatever topics are more pertinent to your area. If there's an issue you've been having in your area, this is a good time to talk to them about it. Septic tank effluent filter options. If I can get this to click. There we go. So the pre-treatment options, this is going to touch on when they use what size and types of tanks. Some installers still wonder why they need to use a 2-compartment tank or a tank with a filter and so on and so forth. Of course, the used septic tank itself removes the bulk solids from the wastewater. It's the primary treatment, keeps the solids from going out to the lateral field. And here's what happens if it's not used or if a baffle is not in place when it's installed. I'm not going to read all that. How does it do all that? Need at least 24-hour retention time, which is why it's sized up. Allows solids to settle, anaerobic breakdown. I think your installers are fully aware of all this information. At least I hope they are. If you have newer installers in your area, this will probably be good for them. Or that plumber that just became an installer. And over time, this is just showing how the sludge scum layers build up to the point that material starts moving out to the system. How often is it needed? It all depends. How big the tank is, the size of the household, how much water they use, if they have garbage disposal. Of course, we've always said about every 3 to 5 years have the tank pumped out. And there's a good old chart that everybody loves, kind of showing about how often to pump it out. Showing the basic setup for a single compartment tank, vent space, air space, scum layer, clear zone, and sludge. And you need to reiterate to your installers how important that vent space is, that they don't run that T all the way up to where the lid is going to sit on top of the T. There needs to be that air gap. That has caused problems in the past. A 2-compartment tank that actually needs 2 risers. They need to have access to both compartments for maintenance issues. So be sure they're aware of that. You'll notice in this example, let them know that if the divider wall opening is in the upper part of the wall, that it actually has to have the outlet T in place. If they're manufacturing and providing that, they need to get back with them and get that outlet T so that it'll be in place. If the opening is down here in the mid part of the wall, then the outlet T is not required. When to use the single compartment, if it's size for group 1, 2, or 3 soil, if an 18-inch separation is maintained. Of course, as we all know, a 12-inch separation is now allowed, regardless of depth to restrictive horizon, rock or water table. But if they do a less than 18-inch separation, then they have to upgrade the tank. So a single compartment can still be used, but only if an 18-inch separation is maintained. When to use a single compartment with an effluent filter? When there's group 4 soil, clay soil, or if less than 18 inches of soil is not maintained, 18-inch separation is not maintained. Upgrade the tank. Just an example showing a filter in place with the riser in place. Of course, this part out here is really not appropriate for us. There's no D-box. Show an example, cutaway of a plastic tank with filter. When to use a 2-compartment tank, they can use it if the system size for group 4 soil and if 18-inch separation is not maintained. They have the option of either the filter or the 2-compartment. Just showing that this is a different variety of the 2-compartment tank where the flow-through opening is, it's 35 to 40% down of the water depth. It's the same as the outlet baffle, in which case they don't have to put the baffling here. Again, the manhole with the riser would be over both compartments. So when to use a 2-compartment tank and an effluent filter? This is required for wetlands. A person could always do it if they wanted, but it's required for wetlands. And in that case, it has to be the larger commercial size filter. Just showing a cutaway view of that. 2-compartment tank with a large filter. Again, this is the 2-compartment tank where the flow-through hole is up towards the top and it shows the baffling in place. That is required. So be sure they're aware of that. And the riser on both compartments. 2-compartment tank with the flow-through hole down lower. And it also has a filter. When to use tanks in series? They can do that in group 4 soil. They could do it if less than 18-inch separation distance is maintained. Or if the minimum capacity for a tank isn't available. So if you need a larger tank, it's not available in your area, they can put 2 tanks in series. As long as the first tank is a minimum of 1,000 gallons, then you can put tanks in series after that to reach your minimum capacity. Of course, the largest tank should always go first. You wouldn't want to put a 1,500 gallon 2-compartment tank and then a 1,000 gallon tank after that, because you'd want that 500 gallon should be the last. So you put the 1,000 first and the 1,500 gallon 2-compartment after it if you wanted to. But regardless, you can do tanks in series if a large tank is not available in your area.
So you're saying if you do tanks in a series to put the 1,000 first, even what if the first compartment of the 1,500 is 1,000 gallons?
Right. The whole idea is you want the smallest compartment last so that the least amount of solids will end up in that smallest compartment or smallest tank at the very end. You want all your larger capacities before your smaller, because that's where your solids are accumulate first. So you want your smallest compartment at the very end, if there was any small. Just like if you had, I'm going to pick a number, 2,000 gallon tanks and a 750 gallon tank in series. You wouldn't put 1,000, then the 750, and then the 1,000. You'd put the 1,000, then the 750. So that those larger tanks would catch more of the solids before it ever got to the smallest unit that you're using.
So you would treat a 2-compartment tank as individual tanks then?
In that situation, yeah. Now, if it's not a 2-compartment tank, it's just one single 1,500, then that's great because it goes in first and then your 1,000 would be after that. The whole idea is you want more capacity for in the first part of the series. Haven't seen it come up that way very often, so.
Well, I do that quite a bit. We always do the 1,500s and the 1,000, but I haven't flip-flopped now.
Yeah. When to use 2 tanks in series with a filter? Kind of falls in the same line. If you have a constructed wetland, effluent filter must be the large commercial size filter. What if they're using plastic and fiberglass tanks? Again, some of this can go back to this whole riser issue with your plastic and fiberglass tanks. They can be helpful for hard to reach sites. They don't have seams that have to be sealed. They are lightweight, but they do have very specific installation instructions. And I'm sure some of your older installers will probably want to chime in on how plastic tanks are awful. They warp when you backfill them, so on and so forth. But it is a good opportunity to talk about how a lot of the newer tanks are a lot better than they were 25 years ago. A lot of the newer tanks, plastic tanks, can be very helpful for hard to reach sites. You know, around your lake areas for folks out there, they can be helpful because it's hard to get delivery trucks sometimes around some of the lake homes.
What about pumping out of like a 500-gallon plastic tank?
What about,
I mean,
oh,
if you
as a
got-
pump tank?
Yeah. You're supposed to pump out of 1,000.
Well, it depends. We'll get to pump tanks here in just a minute. But the question is, can you pump out of a 500-gallon tank? And it really, it depends on the total daily waste flow and then the minimum requirement for your pump tank. We'll touch on that here in just a minute. Just some of the different plastic and fiberglass tanks. A lot of different types are out there, and they are a lot more robust than they used to be. What about commercial use? They can use large precast tanks or plastic fiberglass tanks. They could be constructed on site. Here's some 4,000 and 5,000 gallon tanks at a precast business that are available. So that's one option. Some being delivered, some of your larger plastic tanks. These are a few thousand gallon tanks. They are out there on the market, and some of them have been approved for use in Kentucky. Here's a large constructed on-site septic tank. This would be another option. Effluent filters. Again, they help retain the solids. There's the small residential, then the larger commercial. Of course, they do require maintenance, and you might remind your installers, instead of complaining about filters, can actually be a good opportunity for them to have extra business, going back and maintaining them with a contract with the homeowner. Instead of always griping, maybe make some lemonade out of that lemon. It is an upgrade option, of course, for your Group 4 soils, and when you don't maintain the 18-inch separation. It is required for the wetlands, just some of the different ones out on the market. Of course, there's a whole bunch of them out there. And the large ones. How are they supposed to install it? If the tank is new, follow the manufacturer's instructions.
Hey, Craig, on those
Yep.
filters, do y'all inspect or approve every single filter that comes across?
Say it again? No, back there? What is the answer?
Do you all like approve each filter that kind of, like all those pictures of all those filters? I mean, you don't look at each individual filter. do you?
They're supposed to submit them for review and approval, yes.
Said no.
I don't know why.
She said she hasn't approved all of them, is what she said.
Yeah.
The question is, of the ones
Are they
approved in
supposed to?
Kentucky, do we approve them?
If you ever have a question about any of the filters, just give us a call.
Angela is the filter guru, so if you have a question about filters, direct them to Angela.
Because there are some out there that are not approved for one reason or another, or they are approved with stipulations. So,
But
Are the ones that approved have a KY number on?
are they supposed to have a KY number
They're
on?
supposed to have a KY number on, but a lot of the manufacturers use molds that they can't actually put the KY numbers on there, but they told us that they're spray painting them or putting the number on there somewhere. That's what they told us.
The short answer is the filters are supposed to be reviewed and approved for use in Kentucky.
Okay.
Again, how to install it? If it's new, that's pretty straightforward. If the tank is existing, they need to pump the tank out before they try to work in it. Zoom tight.
Thank you. Get pneumonia. 60
They need to remove the old baffle on the tank, assuming it's there, and add the appropriate piping so they can retrofit to fit the new filter housing. So you can see where they've removed the old baffle, they've cleaned it off, added the Install the filter housing unit and level the housing. Install support legs if needed. On your larger filters, it's a good idea, especially if they're using SDR35 pipe, because those tanks weigh, those filters weigh a fair amount. And they added support legs on that. It's just solid PVC piping going down to the bottom of the tank just to help hold up the filter. Insert the filter into the housing. Recheck the fit with concrete lid so the filter handles are not obstructing the tight fit of the lid. You don't want the filter itself to keep the lid from going all the way down on the top of the tank. Recheck it. Reattach your riser lid on the tank. And good to go. Of course, they have to be maintained. And again, you can remind them it's a good chance for them to get an option for maintenance with the homeowner. Dosing and pump tank options. Here's where we'll talk about your sizing scenario. Do you use a dosing tank or a septic tank? Well, there are tanks that are made specifically just for dosing, and they have the letter D or R at the end of the approval number. D for dosing, R, I can't remember what they restricted. I can't remember what the R is. But a lot of your dosing tanks are just septic tanks that are retrofitted with the pump. They do have to be anchored because since they're dosing, they're not going to be full capacity for a lot of the time, and you don't want just a big concrete air bubble under the ground that can come up if water gets around it. Can a small pump basin be used for a dosing tank? No, those small pump basins are not used for dosing tanks. They can be used at the end of a curtain drain, just to empty out the curtain drain if the curtain drain won't come to daylight. The small pump basins are not approved.
And what is the rationale behind that? Because they
Behind
make
what?
a lot of pump basins. And who decided the rationale behind that?
Behind what? I'm sorry.
Not using a basin, a pump basin, because they make some pretty good sized pump basins.
Well, if they can meet the size, then they can
I mean, they
at
don't
that
make a
point.
500 gallon
Right,
size one.
right.
But just the other.
Because of the flow, if the pump fails, you want capacity there.
Okay.
You know, if they're pumping out to a city sewer system, it's not that big a deal. But to a septic system, we want the capacity so they can get back in there and fix it before it backflows into the system. So they want capacity.
That makes sense.
Can you use 2 compartment tanks for dosing? Generally not. That second compartment is not designed to be dosing. A lot of times it's not going to have the capacity, number one, because it's only 500 gallons. And number two, most of your 2 compartment tanks nowadays have the flow through hole down in the middle part of the wall. So when that pump kicks on, it's not just going to draw down in the second compartment, it's going to draw down both compartments at the same time. So the second compartment is not designed to be a dosing tank. Can you have a cast in place dosing tank? Sure, you can do a cast in place if it's submitted and approved, so on and so forth. Here's just one example, kind of a schematic of what it could look like. Showing an anchor strap, showing the pump on at least an 8-inch block, the on-off float switch. The big thing with the placement of the on-off float switch is you want the water to stay above the float at all times. If it gets below that, it can cause problems for the pump, shorten their life, or just kill them altogether. Gene talked to your installers about this. Again, this shows where the pump line is going up into the riser and then coming back down. And that's where that secondary lid, you couldn't get it on there if you wanted to. And the code doesn't say it has to be there for dosing tanks. Outlet options, several options for the location to exit the dosing tank. You can go through each of these designs and how they work. Pump line can go through the riser, comes up. Of course, there's a grommet sealant here, or it's going through that riser. It can go through the normal tank outlet, just where your normal solid line would have gone anyway. And again, this is a good chance for you all to talk about your installers with any issues y'all might have. Now, this shows a few different things that could be done. The quick disconnect, so if they ever have to replace the pump, you can talk to your installers about that. A lot of folks, they'll have a valve here so they can actually control the flow going out to the D box, because when you're doing your inspection, they have to kick it on, make sure the water flow isn't too fast, filling up and overflowing the D box. There's a nylon rope there where they could lift the pump out if they wanted to. You can talk to them about their electrical connection and how they need to use the proper NEMA boxes that are designed for this. It's just a good time to talk to your installers about any issues you've seen in your area. Why take the line through the riser? You can talk to them about that. Save on the amount of pipe. Holds the connection close to the surface. Why go through the tank outlet? They're going to go through something that's already there. It's easy to keep all the pump lines underground. Your riser options, you have cast in place, and you have your traditional plastic risers. You can have the add-on riser, and this is not unusual for old tanks where they retro a riser on. You can see the black mastic strip back here, and that goes all around the base there. Type of lids, they can be heavy or weigh more than 60 pounds, requiring a vertical lift. Again, they can't just be slide off concrete slab. It has to be a vertical lift. They could just be a lockable lid, or it could require a tool to remove. So there's a heavy one, although technically that is a slide off. That's ideally, this would have a lip that this would sit down in, so it has to be lifted vertically. Somebody could just slide this across and open it up. So that's not the ideal way of doing that. This is a lockable lid. This is usually done on some of your larger systems for schools or cluster systems, things of that nature.
Creation museums.
There you go, creation museums, whatever's fancy in your area. And your typical plastic, which requires a tool to remove, to undo the bolts. Why use a cast-in-place riser? It can be designed for the height needed, can be less expensive. It's pretty easy to ensure the water tightness because there's no seams. Why use an add-on? Don't do that one. You can have sections added to obtain the required height. It can be added to an already manufactured tank. Why use a lockable lid? Usually they're lighter weight. They are generally very secure. So if you're in an area, neighborhood, school, cluster, whatever, they can be very helpful. Camps. Why use a heavy lid? Eliminates the need for a tool, although now you got to use your back. Don't have to keep up with the tool. Has to weigh more than 60 pounds. Our septic tank manhole lids required. Always required when a riser lid is being used. Although the regs don't say it has to be there for dosing tanks, just FYI. Although I like the idea of the safety net for the pump tanks. Where would the riser and pump be located? On the outlet end of the tank. It would be placed there. It could be in the middle of the tank. There's nothing that says where the pump has to be since it's a designated dosing tank. As long as it's in there and has the riser, everything's set up properly. Large dosing tank options. Multiple tanks in series. If you say you need 5,000 gallon dosing capacity, you don't have a single 5,000 gallon tank, can you use multiple tanks? Yes, you can. You can use 5,000 gallon tanks or whatever you can get. But how do you connect them? When more than one tank's being used for dosing situations, the tanks have to be connected at the top and the bottom. And that's so when the pump kicks on, it's drawing all the tanks down at the same time, not just one tank. If you're only drawing one tank down, you really only have 1,000 gallon in that example, 1,000 gallon dosing tank, and all the others are waiting to flow into it.
Can you do that with a 2-compartment tank too?
No, you wouldn't use 2-compartment for dosing anyway. Just because you want all compartments to draw down at the same time.
Right, but if you knock a hole in the bottom.
Oh, the base of the divider wall? Well, I don't see why not, but it'd be easier to just buy a tank, a single compartment tank, I would think. And honestly, if you ever encounter that where they're gonna have to use multiple tanks connected at the top and bottom, the installer needs to work with the manufacturer ahead of time. It's a lot better for the manufacturer to know they need this setup so they can cast a hole in there at the base so nobody's having to knock holes in a concrete tank. And that'd be the same, Bob, for your scenario of the divider wall. If they know they need that hole there, it's better to have them cast a hole there ahead of time and not knock a hole.
Well, that's what I meant.
Give us a scenario of using multiple dosing.
I'll give you a real life one. Cluster system over in Jessamine County. They needed a huge capacity. It's on a golf course neighborhood. They needed a huge amount of dosing capacity. They didn't have a large tank available, so they put like 6 tanks. I don't remember the sizes. A bank of tanks to get their dosing capacity, and all of them were tied together at the top and the base, and then the pump put in one. So when that pump kicked on, it just drawing them all down at the same time. And as one filled up, they were all filling up equally by doing that at the top and bottom.
And how many pre-treatment tanks did they have?
Well, it was a cluster system. Each home had its own tank.
Okay.
Then it all flowed to advanced treatment unit. Then it all came down. It was drip irrigation.
Okay, I've got you.
It was, yeah. But the whole point is, if you have to put tanks together to reach dosing capacity, they need to be connected at the top and bottom to act as one large unit. That's just showing one possible scenario right there. That doesn't show the connections, but if that was the case, they'd be connected at the top and bottom. You can have large special made tanks. This one was interesting. This dosing tank was actually vertical instead of not what we traditionally think of. They stacked rings up to get the capacity, and it was a lot of capacity. That was very deep in the ground. They stacked up 3 or 4 of those rings. It was huge, all the way up. That's their dosing chamber. You can have cast in place tanks. Why would you use multiple tanks? Gain the required capacity. There's not one tank large enough to get the capacity. Why would you not use multiple tanks? Well, it can cost more. It's more labor. And it takes up a little more space. Why use special made? To obtain the required capacity. It's more space conservative since you're just using one tank, probably one tank. Less labor, might be less expensive. Why not to do it? Might take a little more time. It's usually approved on site. Why use a cast in place? Easier to obtain the required capacity. Save on space. It may or may not be less expensive. Why not to? It might take more time for installation because they're building it right there on the site. It has to be approved on site. It could be turned down for approval after they've poured it if they screw it up. Okay, so let me go back for 1 minute on the dosing tanks. The question was asked earlier about 500-gallon tank being used for dosing.
For a typical 3-bedroom home.
For a three-bedroom
This
home.
is mainly for like repairs though.
Okay,
You know,
well.
we're lacking space and.
Okay. Well, it all goes back to the required minimum capacity for a dosing tank. So in our example, 3-bedroom home, your TDW is 330 gallons. The size of a dosing tank, 2 times TDW. So your minimum dosing tank would need to be at least 660 gallons. So if the reg can be met, it has to be met. So they would need a minimum 660 gallon dosing tank. If you're talking about a repair where they do not have the room, they can't fit anything else in, then yeah, it's a repair. But in that case, you would need to get a variance. The property owner would need to request a variance for that part of the reg that can't be met. And then y'all would either approve or disapprove the variance at your level and go from there. In general, 500-gallon tanks aren't going to have much use for even dosing. A 2-bedroom home, it could be 2 times 110, 220 TDW, 220 times 2, 440 dosing tank. A 500-gallon tank that's approved could be used as a dosing tank for a 2-bedroom home and meet regs with no variance. Aerobic treatment units, why use an ATU? You do get a cleaner effluent overall. You might be able to get up to a 30% reduction in the sizing of the lateral field. So that can save as far as space goes for the lateral field because it is a cleaner effluent. Some clients just want a cleaner system nowadays. And in some cases, it might help correct a failing system by cleaning up the effluent, adding some oxygen to the waste stream going out to the lateral lines. There's aerobic units with a built-in trash compartment shown there at the left side. And of course, there's some that don't have the built-in trash compartment. Do you have to use a septic tank with the aerobic unit? If the ATU does not have the built-in trash chamber, then they would need a septic tank in front of the ATU. Or if their manufacturer just requires it themselves. So this is showing a aerobic tank with a trash chamber, so it's just the one unit. This is showing an aerobic tank without a trash chamber, so they've shown where they have a septic tank also in line before the aerobic unit. Why use an ATU without a trash chamber? Well, for a repair, you might already have a septic tank in place. So why buy an aerobic unit that also has a trash chamber? They could put in an aerobic unit that doesn't have the trash chamber and just use the existing tank in front of the aerobic unit. Why use an ATU with a trash chamber? Well, there'd be less time involved to put it in as far as a new installation because they don't have to put in a separate tank. It'd be less complicated. It might be less expensive, less space required since it's just one unit. And this is also called field lines or septic lines. Laterals. A pre-treatment unit. Tank.
I'm so excited.
Yes. I think I forgot one. Oh, we still got two to go. Okay.
Yeah. We're gonna take our lunch.
Are we doing lunch? All right. What's this?
Need to show this.
We can do that.
Yeah, let's do that.
I don't know what time it is.
Okay, it's 1 o'clock. I know. Oh, hang on a minute. We will go, okay. Okay, I don't know if y'all can see this or not. Out there. Okay, the answer as far as for the test, number 10, the answer is C, as in cat. I don't know if y'all can see this or not, but that is C as in cat, but it is a computer monitor. That's the answer to number 10. Can't see it. And also, while you're there, we'll go ahead and give you the answer to number 20. The answer to number 20 is A, as in apple, which is the answer number 20. So answer number 10 is C, answer number 20 is A. We're gonna go ahead and break for lunch. It's 1 o'clock here, so we'll meet back at, give them an hour and 15 minutes. Just an hour? Okay, okay, be back in an hour. So be back by 2 o'clock Eastern time. Thanks.
All right, welcome back. We're rolling on. Don't want to hold up progress.
No.
It's easier to, I don't know, maybe not.
All right, we're going to talk about constructed wetland options. Yeah, it's unmuted. Sizing of wetlands. A lot of installers aren't real familiar with wetlands still, so you can talk about that. It is sized at 1.3 cubic feet times the TDW. It's usually given in square feet, and that's because there's a 1 foot water depth on most designs, and so the cubic feet with the 1 foot water depth becomes square feet. Although the wetland cells can be up to 18 inches deep, that would change that calculation. It's based on the number of design units for For a home, that's bedrooms, restaurant, meals per seat, school, number of students. And there are a lot of different designs that can be used as far as the shape of them. You can see there in that photo, the lower left, that one is kind of curved around, following the contour. Here's a sizing example you can go over with your installers so they can follow along with how a wetland cell is sized. It's simply the TDW, 3 times 110, and the TDW of 330 times the 1.3 cubic feet per gallon. So in that case, 429 cubic foot wetland cell. Wetland cell is not dependent on the soil type. If the cell is designed with the 1 foot water depth, then the wetland cell itself is 429 square feet. If it's designed with an 18-inch water depth, then it'd be 429 divided by 1.5, so 286 square feet. Require the same amount of fill material, just have a smaller footprint, although be aware if you do an 18-inch water depth, they do need to use appropriate plants to grow to that depth. Most plants work best in a 12-inch cell depth. Why the 12? Standard or normal way of designing, and it's easier to work with in shallow soil conditions. You might get more evapotranspiration, and plant species are more available for 12-inch depths than for the 18-inch depths. How long, how wide? The wetland cell needs to have a 3:1 to 5:1 length to width ratio for if it's gravity fed, and that's for the 1-cell system or for each cell in a 2-cell system. If it's using a pressure, if the wetland cell's dosed, then it's a different ratio. You generally actually want it more square shaped, so the pressure line spreads out across the width. Here's just an example. If it's a 3-bedroom home, the 1 foot water depth, 429 square foot cell, the minimum length would be 36 feet long. It'd be 12 foot wide for the 3:1 ratio, length to width, up to a 5:1 length to width ratio of 9.5 feet by 47.5 feet. How many cells do you use? Well, usually it's only one. Showing a few examples, but if they want to design 2 cells or more, they can. There's just a couple examples you can show your installers. There's a 2-cell example. And of course, larger systems are more likely to use your 2 cells. That's on school from many years ago. Why use 1 cell? Obviously more simple to construct, 1 excavation, there's just 1 liner. Fewer overall materials are needed. Why use 2 cells? The layout of the area might not allow 1 cell. Large systems are sometimes easier to lay out and install by using 2 cells. Also, if you have a 2nd cell and you're in group 4 soil, then you don't necessarily have to install the liner in that 2nd cell. You can use the group 4 soil that's there on the site. That's only if for a 2nd cell. The 1st cell would still have to have the liner. Or for landscaping reasons, make it fit into the landscape of the property. Showing an example of a typical 1-cell option, typical 2-cell option, and some of the varieties of layouts. Again, you can talk to your installers about some of these different options. Water level control boxes, sometimes they're used. Sometimes, there's just an example. Don't see these real often anymore. That's how they would be installed if they were going to be used. And that allows for the water level to be controlled. It can be lowered or raised. That can be helpful possibly, but it can also cause problems. So a lot of folks have gone away from using these. So what are your options with the water level control box? Well, you can use them or you don't use them. That's it. It's okay if you don't use them, as long as the wetland cell itself is constructed properly. Why use it? Control the water level in the cell. It might encourage root growth deeper into the cell fill material. By lowering the water level, you can encourage the roots to grow down and then raise it back up once the roots have grown down into the fill material. Or if you needed to drain the water out of the cell, then you could lower it, drain it out through that water level control box. There's a 6-inch access port if the cell needed to be pumped out, if you couldn't drain it out. Why not use a water level control box? Well, it is extra materials, a little more work time, more expense for those extra materials. It does create an opportunity for tampering from people outside. Somebody come along and mess around with the water level and drop the water down, kill all the plants. It does create the possibility for leakage since the pipe is exiting through the bottom part of the liner. So what are your inlet and outlet options for wetlands? You can use the header pipes, and if you use the header pipe on the outlet end, and no water level control box, then the outlet header itself would set the water level. There's an example of a header pipe. The holes drilled in. And there is a fixed water level outlet pipe, so when the water level gets up to those top holes, it flows out and that sets the water depth. No level control box would be needed. Inlet and outlet header location options. There's a top. Usually the inlets go in at the bottom of the wetland cell. They drop over the edge of the framework and go into the bottom part, and that way the dirtiest water is put into the bottom part of the cell, so it's not up towards the top. There's the bottom location. Like I said, usually that's where the inlets are. Or vertical. Some people use the crocks for like water meter crocks, and they'll use those for the inlets and outlets with holes drilled in the crock itself. There's an example. I don't know if you can see it very well, but there's in the slide, in this example, it shows holes drilled in the crock. Why use a header pipe? Provides for more equal distribution. Why use a vertical inlet and outlet? Well, they are easier to install. It provides direct access to pump the water out of the cell, so then you don't have to have that 6-inch access pipe. Liner options. There's a lot of different materials out there now. You can go through these with your installers. The rubber industrial roofing material has become very popular because it's thicker, it's more durable, it's already UV protected, and it's very easy to work with. It's readily available. And it mentions the clay when you're on a group 4 site. And again, it's only for the second cell or after. It can't be used in the first cell. Some reasons to use the different materials. You can discuss these with your installers. Some of the advantages, some of the disadvantages of each material. Again, zoom tight. Your installers, they might have input on some of these materials, the liners, why they would be used one way or the other, some of their past experience. Liner protection. If the excavation has exposed rocks or roots, then some type of liner protection is needed. Dugout walls versus timber walls. Why use a dugout? Well, there's less material expense. Some cell wall materials decay, possibly less work. Why use timber wall? It might save labor or time, I'm not sure how, but overall, it just makes a cleaner job. Maybe used to protect the liner from those sharp edges or roots. It's easier to maintain the dimensions. It's a lot easier to landscape. So what are the cell wall material options? Soil in your liner. Landscape timbers or railroad ties. Cement blocks or decorative blocks. Those are all options. Your fill material for the wetland cell itself. Number 2, crushed limestone. Number 4, larger Furnace slag is considered an option. River rock. And here's a photo showing some of the differences in some of those materials. Pea gravel is not to be used, it's too small. Some unapproved cell fill materials, tire chips, number 57, rock, number 8 and 9, rock, unscreened creek rock, cell cover material options, above the water level, the cell fill material, there needs to be the cover material. This is where number 57s could possibly be used. So this is above the water level. Pea gravel can be used. Decorative stone. This is showing how the cell cover material would be placed. This is the cell fill material where the water flow is. Anywhere from 12 to 18 inches. That's the water flow. And above that is at least 2 inches of cell cover material. And that's above the water level, so it should be dry cap rock, basically. You might reiterate to your installers that mulch and other biodegradable materials are not approved as the covered material. Plant options. All the plants must be a water-loving type plant. They need to be able to live in shallow water, not just wet soil. And this goes through some of the common plants that are used. I'm sure your installers might have some input on some of this if they've installed them before. Spacing for the plants, you can discuss with them. That last one did talk about the spacing and about how many plants it would then need. So you can review that with them so they're aware of that. Plants can be potted plants, however, they do need to remove the pot from the plant. They can be bare root plants. They can be bulbs if they're water-loving types. Why one plant instead of another? Well, root penetration depth matters versus the design of the wetland cell, water depth. The homeowners might want a particular type. They might not want cattails out in their yard. They might want something that looks nicer. The availability of the plants, the cost of the plants, the ease of planting, ease of maintenance, all these will factor into the type of plant that they might choose. Just a few photos showing how wetland cells can be done. Probably not quite enough plants there. The wetland cell overflow lateral field, it's 50% of a full-size lateral field, and therefore it can be a very space-efficient system option. Okay. Let's see if there's any questions about wetlands.
Are there very many wetlands going in now?
I don't see very many, no.
I got one line today.
We have lunch
Today, yeah.
around the lakes.
There for a while, we had several, but
Let's go over there.
All right, I think we're good on questions. Okay. Trench barrier material, this is the material that installer has to put above the rock in a rock system and above a curtain drain, the rock in the curtain drain. So they're aware of what's required. Just showing a photo. Notice the system on the right might be a wee bit deep in there. Approved barrier materials, straw or filter fabric. Why would you use straw? Easy to use, usually readily available. Why filter fabric? It is now more readily available, and it might be easier to get to the job site since you're not hauling a bunch of bales of straw around. I've seen a lot more installers go into filter fabric on their jobs.
cheaper.
Has it gotten cheaper?
It has, yeah. Straw's really gone up. That's the reason that some of my installers have said that.
So if your installers aren't used to using filter fabric, you might mention that cost of straw has gone up. It might be a cheaper option for them. Might be easier to use. I would think it'd be easier to inspect because once they put that layer of filter fabric down, you know it's there. You don't have to worry about, do they have enough straw? And it could save expense on labor. Unapproved barrier materials. Paper, shredded paper, that's not approved. Pieces of newspaper. Plastic, don't want that. Compost, hay, none of those are approved. When's it required? Above your conventional rock trenches, rock beds, and curtain drains. Low pressure pipe trenches also when they use rock. How much? 4 inches on conventional trenches, rock beds, curtain drains, 2 inches on low pressure pipe trenches. How much filter fabric? A single layer with complete coverage from side to side and end to end. If you need to, your installers can take a break, or you can drive on. Keep things in perspective. Some of your distribution options you can discuss with your installers. First and foremost, you need to stress to them they need to use distribution boxes on gravity flow systems. The types, equal flow distribution, level box, basically an equal flow box with no baffle, thank you. It's right after lunch. Your hillside boxes and low pressure lines, pressure. So equal flow distribution, why use equal flow? It's very common, easy to find. Most installers are familiar with it. Very easy to set it up to distribute the effluent equally to each line. Why would you not use the equal flow distribution? Well, if you're not able to install equal length lines on the layout of the lot, or if a holding tank has to be used at the end of the lateral field, sometimes it's a little easier to design it using hillside boxes. It can be done with equal flow, but it's easier with hillside. You need to pump or use low pressure distribution. Level distribution is for very level lots only. Why use level? You're on a lot with a slope of 1% or less. You're going into one bed, or if equal flow boxes aren't available, and you're on a very level lot. Why not use it? You're on a lot with slope more than 1%. And a few other items. Hillside boxes. Why use them? If you can't get equal length lines, if you have a holding tank at the end, easier to run it off that last hillside box. If you're on a steep site, and sometimes it might be easier to repair. Why not to use them? If you can get equal length lines, they might want to go ahead and use equal flow. If they're wanting equal distribution to each line. And definitely if you're on a group 4 site, then remind them that hillside is not an option. Low pressure pipe. Don't see very many of these going in anymore. Just very rare item. Why use it? If you want a very accurate equal distribution, a little bit smaller area, possibly poor soil conditions. Why not use it? It does require a pump tank and a pump, which means electrical circuits, and therefore it could be more expensive. It also has a lot more stringent design requirements. It's not as straightforward as your conventional options. Abbreviation for Advanced Treatment Unit, ATU. What contains kitchen sink, dishwasher, and toilet discharge? That's your black water. And now you can congratulate them on a great job. Some of the lateral field options you can discuss with them. Always remember, if one option won't fit a site, there might be several others to look at with them. If they have difficult sites due to slope, available space, configuration, different rows or beds might be worth trying. You can go over the rock options. And again, in your area, you can talk about some different issues that you might have with the type of rock that's available, the rock systems that they've been putting in, as far as the uniformity of rock, and how it's supposed to be clean. Some of the different rock choices. Talk to them about their conventional trenches, how the layout can work with different lots. Remind them about the sod being removed or turned under before adding cover soil. Rock has to have at least 10 inches of settled group 3 or better soil above it. Of course, we've always just said 12. It just makes things easy. Chambers have to have at least 6. Rock beds. Anything that's 3 foot wide through 12 foot wide is considered a bed. Long rock beds weren't the best choice for that particular site because the contour, you can see how much deeper it got. That fill's almost butt deep in that system. So shorter beds might have been a better way to get that system to go in right. Follow contour, stay at the right depth. Long beds can be used if your lot allows for them. Some shorter beds oftentimes have to be used just to get it to fit properly in the area allowed. Here's an example where 6 30-foot long, 6-foot wide beds were used. Just fit into this small area. And this example where a little bit longer were used. 4-foot gravel beds have the same sizing as 3-foot leaching chambers. Go through a sizing example with them. Group 3 soil needed 245 feet of either the 3-foot chambers or the 4-foot rock. Go through your rock choices. And there's just talking about how a layout would be very straightforward for that particular lot there versus a different lot. And again, a good chance to talk to your installers about different layouts that have been used in your all's area, different requirements that were needed. Chambers. Chambers can help overcome different site requirements or challenges. A lot of people just like using chambers more nowadays. They can be a space-saving system, and there's a lot of options out there now. There's the 1-foot wide standard, 2-foot wide standard, 3-foot wide, and then the chamber beds of your standard chambers. And also there's now the shorter 8-inch tall chambers that are available in all of those above options, including Shorty chamber beds are now available to use. So you can talk to your installers about the sizing of your chambers. 1-foot conventional chamber, same as a 2-foot wide conventional gravel as far as linear footage. Gives a sizing example. Same with the 2-foot. Gives an example. It only needs 70% of 2-foot rock. And the 3-foot, which most people are familiar with. And it only needs 55% of your 2-foot rock. That's the standard height chamber. Chamber beds, 6 foot, 9 foot, 12 foot wide chamber beds. They can help save space. Combinations. If you have a difficult site, you can't just get anything to fit. Think about using a combination system with single rows and beds. Some sites might hold long single rows and short beds. So here's a situation where they used a combination. They had 6 foot chamber bed in one area, 3 foot chamber trench over in another. They didn't have enough area to fit all of just one type lateral line, so they combined it. It is a little bit more of a challenge to size, because a little more work involved to design it. So you can go through this. Now, before you present this, I would recommend you go through it yourself to make sure you understand how these numbers work. It's not real difficult. You can help them go through how they figure up a combination system. Here's one example. 3-bedroom home. They lay out a system for 6 foot wide beds in group 3 soil. Goes through the sizing for those 6 foot wide beds. They need 178 feet, 6 foot wide beds. They lay out the system, but they can only get 146 feet of 6 foot wide beds. So they still have 32 feet of 6 foot bed to make up. So they look at finishing up the system using 4 foot wide rock beds for that extra footage they need. So how much 4 foot wide rock lateral do you need to finish that last 32 feet? And this is how you do it. They need that third bullet. They need another 32 feet of 6 foot to meet the requirement, and they want to convert that to 4 foot wide instead of the 6 foot wide. So they convert the 32 feet of 6 foot back into the 2 foot conventional. You're just working backwards in how you sized it. So the 32 feet divided by 0.40, which is the 6 foot rock bed sizing. 32 feet divided by the 0.40, they need 80 feet of 2 foot rock. Now take the 80 feet of 2 foot rock and now convert that to the 4 foot rock by going back to the same table, 80 times 0.55. They would need 44 feet of 4 foot rock bed. So basically that 44 feet of 4 foot rock bed is equivalent to 32 feet of 6 foot wide rock bed. And that's how it might look for the system. Now this is a hillside distribution. So they got the total footage that way. They didn't have to be the same length since it was hillside, but this is equivalent to what was that was needed for the 6 foot wide. Another example you can work through with them. They needed 194 feet of 6 foot rock. They want 4 beds of 49 foot each. They can only fit 3 beds. They want to convert the last bed to a 10 foot wide rock bed. So they need to convert that 49 feet of 6 foot wide over to a 10 foot wide rock bed. Again, work backwards. Your 49 feet of 6 foot divided by the 0.40 that you would normally multiply to get a 6 foot rock bed. Takes you back to 123 feet of a conventional 2 foot wide trench. Now convert that over to the 10 foot wide by multiplying by 0.28 from your rock bed chart. So they would just need 35 feet of 10 foot wide rock bed. That would be equivalent to the 49 feet of 6 foot rock bed. And that's how it might look. The 35 feet of 10 foot rock bed is equivalent to each of these others, so it can be used as part of an EcoFlow system from one single EcoFlow box up here. Combination example 3, again, we're just working backwards for whatever amount is left over. In this case, they're doing 245 feet of 3 foot chambers. They had 3 82 foot lines. They can only fit 2 82 foot lines. So the last one, they're going to convert the 82 feet of chambers to 6 foot wide chamber bed. Convert the 82 feet of 3-foot chambers back to conventional by dividing by 0.55, 149 feet. Convert that forward now to the 6-foot wide rock. 149 times 0.40, 60 feet of 6-foot rock. And convert that over to your chambers by using your 0.85 multiplier. 51 feet of 6-foot wide leaching chamber bed. And that's how it might look after it's done.
Is there a reason that they're using 2 boxes?
The, yeah,
I mean, what?
since this has to go in, because they're trying to feed each box, each line of chambers, they could just run one line and put a header right here.
Okay, I was gonna say, because the other one was the 6 foot and it had 2, but all of the other, or the 10 had 2
Right.
lines. but
Well, the
6
10
on the other one had only 1 line.
Right, well,
So I just-
by reg,
reason.
for the wider rock beds, they have to have at least 2 perforated lines going down through the rock
Oh, was
bed.
that rock earlier? I didn't take it.
Yeah, the earlier ones were rock, yeah. And that's why it had 2 lines.
I was ready to get to this.
Yeah.
overflow thing.
6-foot wide rock bed only has to have 1 perforated line down through the middle. 10-foot wide has to have 2 perforated lines in it. That's why it did that earlier. Good question though, because your installers might ask the same thing. Shorty chambers. If you're not familiar with these, you might run through these numbers before you try to present this material. They are different sizing standards. 1-foot shorties actually use more footage than 2-foot rock. It needs 120% of your 2-foot rock footage. So your rock footage, you multiply by 1.2 to get your 1-foot wide shorty chambers. And there's an example you can work through. 2-foot shorties need 91% of your 2-foot rock. So an example where you're going to multiply through your 2-foot rock by 0.91 to get your 2-foot shorty chamber footage. 3-foot shorties, your multiplier is 65% of your 2-foot rock, so your multiplier is 0.65. Your 2-foot rock footage times 0.65 gives you your footage of 3-foot wide shorties. And then just showing a couple layouts of, there's a 3-foot wide shorty system. These can be helpful on shallow systems. If you want to put in less cover soil, it saves you 4 inches cover soil amount since they're only 8-inch tall chambers instead of 12-inch tall. But it does take up a little more footprint space since there's a little more footage. Shorty chambers can be used in beds. They're size the exact same as a rock bed of the same bed width. So whatever your footage is for a rock bed, you could use the same footage and do it in shorty chambers. Some of the different options for your leaching chambers, you can talk to them about the different angles and swivels, which helps some of the layout of lines, just to get them to follow contour easier. I know in years past, some installers would complain it's hard to get chambers to follow contours. There are pieces and parts out there to help them meet that challenge. You see how that line is kind of snaking along because they've used the angles in there. Bending the row, using the angles. It is possible for them to follow the contours. And showing it in practical use out in the field. Same with swivels, how they can follow the contour. The end caps, there's a variety of end caps out there. On the inlet end caps, they should always be putting the inlet pipe in the top hole, not into the bottom hole of the on the inlet end of your chambers. Remind them of that. And you might remind them that end caps in Kentucky are not approved to be used as a distribution device. They still have to use an actual distribution box before the lines chambers. Showing a splash guard attached. Some of them are the splash guard is built into the end cap itself. And talk to them about the splash guards. Just trying to help keep the effluent from rutting out an area when it spills into the end of the chamber. Some of the alternative aggregates that have come on the market, Easy Flow is one of the types. It's still considered an experimental system for your lateral lines. There's the requirements as an experimental system. However, the Easy Flow, which it's the pipe, what looks like it has the packing peanuts around the perforated line. It is approved. It's not experimental for if it's going to be used in a curtain drain. They can use Easy Flow drainage pipe for curtain drains, and it's approved for that. And there's a photo of it. That's the Easy Flow in lateral line or bed. Another example, and I call it packing peanuts. It's packed around the perforated line. There it's being put in, but it's put in a little too deep. Talks about how it's going to be installed in that scenario. Lateral field modifications, curtain drains. I know a lot of your installers don't like to deal with curtain drains. I've never understood why. If the site requires it, to me, it's just a little more work for them, but they're going to charge the homeowner anyway. Talk to them about how it's installed, how it's laid out, the different configurations that the curtain drains might have, depending on the lay of the land and the lateral line layout. Might be in a horseshoe, might be on two sides. And it should be documented the need for it on the side valve. This is going to show a couple of the layouts. Talk to them about the setbacks for the curtain drains to make sure they stay away from the laterals and how they actually work. And it's just showing how some of the curtain drains might lay out around the lateral field. Has to come out to daylight. If they're not sure how to configure it, they need to touch base with you about the curtain drain. And sometimes it needs to go completely around the system. Usually on real level lots, it might be that way. And if they can't get it to daylight, it will need to go to a basin with a sump pump. In that case, the basin doesn't have a minimum sizing. It's just showing an example of what a basin might look like with a sump pump in it. Black corrugated pipe with slots. Talk to them about the required piping for the curtain drains and the trench fill material, how deep it has to be as far as coming up to the top of the ground or within 4 inches. Again, the Easy Flow is an approved option for curtain drain. There's your pipe with slots. Talks about pipe with holes. It's for distribution. The large rolls of slotted pipe can be used for curtain drains, even though it's not used for lateral lines. Have to be filled. They're supposed to put 2 inches of rock in the bottom of the curtain drain, then put in the piping, then bring the rock up to within 4 inches of the surface. For curtain drains that are less than 12 inches wide, they have to use pea gravel. Cover all the gravel within the curtain drain. Yeah, don't forget the barrier material. No plastic required. Hopefully this isn't still talked about out there much, but I know many years ago, some people were under the impression that a curtain drain had to have plastic on the downslope side wall of the curtain drain. Just remind them, no plastic in the curtain drain. Bare material, we've already talked about. They can use filter fabric, they can use straw. Just make sure they use the right kind of straw. On-site humor, bad attempt. Need to have enough straw over the gravel so the gravel can't be seen, a good thick layer. If you can see any gravel, let them know that they don't have enough straw. Regulations say 4 inches, good handful thickness of straw. When they go to bring it to daylight, once they get past the last lateral line, they don't have to keep using the rock and perforated or slotted line. They can take it to solid pipe and just take it on out to daylight. Don't put floor drains into your curtain drains. Some people dump different things in the floor drains. Okay. Any questions on the on-site material? Straightforward stuff. Make sure there's no questions out in webinar land. Okay, we're moving on to the next presentation. Chris Edwards will be taking care of this. Stop cheering so loudly.
Jesus. Did y'all get all that?
Did I go too fast?
Oh, no. All right, hey folks, this is going to dovetail with what we did last year. Remember we did last year a little bit of internet stuff, Facebook and all that good stuff. This is going to dovetail with that. A lot of this stuff is pretty simple information for us, but like we always say, remember, these classes aren't for y'all. These guys are getting older, statewide. You think about the last time you gave this training. How many 20 to 30-year-old faces did you see? So, huh? You're the only one. Most everybody, it's a dying art. So anyway, these guys, we put this stuff out there to give them a little, think a little outside the box and to give them some skills that they need to compete in the business world. All right. I mean, we may give this to 500 installers and maybe 5 of them will get something out of it. That's better than none. So I know not a lot of y'all are crazy about going outside the box on this, but nevertheless, I'm going to do it anyway. All right, so this is basic computers for small businesses. Wait till next year, we're going to do accounting. Oh, yeah. All right, so we're going to go over some simple stuff. I'm not going to spoon feed it to you. There's a real quick definition. You're going to want to familiarize yourself with this, and you're going to need Wi-Fi. Angela, did you make it to where the videos are on here?
The
Period.
videos are on there and they will click and work.
Okay, so you don't need Wi-Fi for this. There's some good videos on here. It's not just to eat up time. They will actually get something out. So we're going to go just to hit the real high points of computing. Two computer hardware and software. Then it's going to go in explaining what the difference in hardware and software is. Once again, folks, this is real basic stuff. Examples of it. Remember, we're talking to guys that haven't used a computer at all ever, and maybe they just don't, maybe they're afraid to ask for help in this. Maybe they would really be interested in this, but they don't want to look silly and ask for help. So that's why this is pretty generic stuff we've all known for years and years. Mouse, printer, image scanner. And this is going to go into what programs, what is computer software, and some real quick examples. This was going to be really long-winded, but then it got into being an advertisement for just 1 or 2 companies, so we just kind of kept it real, basically stuff that comes with every computer. Input devices, outputs, and a really general understanding of how the whole computer thing works. All right. All right, and so then we got down to this, because last year we got into advertising and Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff. And so this year we want to make sure they're safe with it. So we're going to go over some very basics for cybers. First thing is that's a video. We're not going to watch the video. Y'all can watch it on your own. It's about, I forget how long.
2.5 minutes.
2.5 minutes. It's just an example of one that happened. And then it talks about, this basically illustrates that small businesses are the ones that are getting hacked most and get the most damage done to them. Because why is that? Because the large corporations have millions of dollars to spend on cybersecurity. You know, Joe's backhoe service, not so much. So we want them to, if they want to computerize, we want them to, but we don't want them to get all their stuff swiped. That'll get their attention when they know they can shut them down for a week, up to a week. All right, then we're going to go through how they spread viruses, how they will contract viruses in their computer systems at home. We're going to explain to them what the cyber threats are: viruses, hackers, spyware, and identity thieves. I would say these guys are vulnerable to all four of these, especially the spyware is what I'd be guessing would be most of them. 44% of small businesses report being victim of cyber attack. Average cost $9,000. And that's them right there, which are making the leap to computerized systems and digital records are attractive targets for hackers, which is exactly what these guys are. On the off chance that they went to last year and this year and said, hey, you know what? I'm going to update myself. Then there's a little stat about the Secret Service and Verizon. 63% were companies with 100 employees or fewer. Once again, we're just trying to drive home the point that these guys are pretty ripe targets. 95% of credit card data breaches were on small business customers. Here's some tips for what they can do to improve their business to avoid this happening to them. Assess risk and identify weaknesses. Create a contingency plan. Now, this stuff don't have to be really boring with them if they'll ask questions. But if you're in a room where you're getting blank stares, ask one of them. What would be, if you were to do this, what would be your contingency plan? And then that might spark a little, well, what is a contingency plan? And then you can go into it. And you can do that almost on, well, you can do it on every topic in this presentation. They need to educate their employees, which usually these are family-run businesses, so that's not a big stretch. These guys can get their family members up to speed pretty quick. If I would guess, I would say probably 95% of these guys, their wives run the business. Comic relief. No, I'm not in a laughing mood today. What's up? I'm going like way faster than Craig. All right, how they need to hold the employees accountable to their security policies and just explain to them why they got to use strong passwords, not password 1234 and stuff like that. Back up critical information. That's really important for these guys. It doesn't have to be a cyber attack. They can screw something up, or their computer could fail, their system could fail, and erase all their data. If they don't have it backed up, then they've just wasted a couple of years of getting modernized for nothing, and they're going to go right back to paper files instantly. So please go over this with them about how to get a backup, where to store their backup data, invest in loss protection software, secure your internet connection. Once again, these guys are going to be pretty much novices at this. I bet you there's some of them out there that want to do this. They're not even aware of any dangers that are out there on the internet. So you want to go over the basic general stuff, firewalls. Update your software. That way their security is getting updated. Have them understand that, that doesn't necessarily, it's not a bad thing at all to update their spyware and their software, their operating system. I tried to put pictures of something other than Windows up there, so that's what you got. Yeah, make sure they understand the difference in the updates, and then they have to install them. Once again, pretty simple stuff. Some of them update automatically. That's probably best. If we really stress that to them, that's best if they set their software to update automatically. Then they don't have to go in and do it. But they will have to install them. All right, here's how to run your antivirus software. Periodically check to see if your antivirus is up to date by opening your antivirus program and checking the last updated date. Simple stuff. Stuff they can probably handle, but it's all going to be new to them. And it just explains what it's gonna do. First part is how to do it, the second part is what it's gonna do. All right, and then to prevent identity theft, which is probably what's gonna get their attention, because that's what you hear in the news most of the time, is identity theft. So of everything in this presentation, I would think this would probably be the most interesting to them. And protect other people's information as you would your own. Never send personal confidential email or information via email or instant messages, as these can be easily intercepted. And these cartoons are kind of silly, but actually every one of them serve a purpose. This is something that actually I learned when I was doing this presentation. Order a copy of your credit reports. And then you can compare those, and that way you can see if somebody's stolen your identity and is using your credit for bad stuff or anything that's not related to you, basically. And they can, at the same time, they'll figure out how to contact those credit reporting agencies and get it fixed. It's not an easy process. My wife got her purse stolen. It's kind of a nightmare, but it can be done. All right, turn on personal firewalls. How many is guilty of that? How many of you have had a firewall on your computer and never turned it on? Liars. Protective barriers between the computers and the internet. You don't have to explain what a ping is. If somebody asks, you can just tell them that's how, you can explain it to them. That's how like a hacker calls on a telephone. They send out the ping, and if it pings back without a firewall, that's just like answering the phone. And that way they know who to target. And the firewall prevents it. They can avoid spyware and adware. And you can explain to them that if they contact this stuff, not only will the person that put it on there, the entity that put it on there, will know their every move on the internet, but it'll also slow and bog down their system quite a bit, which can be pretty frustrating to somebody who's just learning how to do this stuff. And the downware the software from unknown internet sources, that's pretty much a no-go. Protect the passwords. Do not share it. Don't write it down on a sticky note hanging on the computer screen like this. Do not use common passwords, ABC, 123, 1234. I kind of like let me in. I thought that was kind of original, to be honest with you. I like that one. Yeah, that's probably mine. Yeah, baseball one.
This password is football. It's not something.
I like football. Football's cool.
I got a bunch of them.
After class, we'll all take guesses and see who wins. When choosing the password, mix upper and lower case, use a minimum of 8 characters, whatever that word is, to help you remember a difficult password. Mnemonics, is that what that says? Is that what it is, mnemonics? I know what it is, I just couldn't pronounce the word. Shut up, Craig. Back up your important files. We've already gone over this, but we're going to go over it a couple of times just to make sure they understand. Because my nightmare on this is somebody actually listens to it, decides to modernize their business, and then in a month they lose everything. That's going to make some rather chapped behinds. Save copies of your important documents and files on a CD or an online backup service, a flash drive. And be my guest, these guys will use a flash drive. That's when they start to learn how. Somebody's going to show them how to do it, and that's the easiest way to do it. Save it on a flash drive, put it in a safe or somewhere other than your office. All right, this is a video on 8 steps how to prevent a hack. We're not going to watch it today. Let's see how long it is. I forgot. 4 minutes and 10 seconds, so no big deal. And here's the sources for all this, just in case somebody thought I made up all these numbers. Yeah, notice I can be a little paranoid at times. All right, I have no idea what this is. This is something new, so find filter. Oh, word find.
Got it.
Boom. Filter. Find grade. Bang. Grade. Find grease. Bang. Diagonally. Find hillside. Backwards. Drawing. Sizing. Level. Equal. Side. 80. Done.
Okay, I've got some housekeeping.
All right, does anybody have questions over this? I know I took some beatings last year over this whole Facebook thing, and I still say I'm right, that needed to be done. Has anybody noticed that anybody installer started doing that stuff and advertising or anything? For real?
Yeah,
Outstanding.
we did. Some of our younger guys,
Yeah.
you know, even some of the more middle-aged ones, some of the younger ones were telling them how much business they were getting and stuff, and we've had a couple of our older ones try to set up
You just made my day. You're my new favorite.
Thanks.
All right, here's your test questions. Number 30, his answer is B as in Bravo. Am I supposed to say this stupid thing?
If you don't have to.
No, we've already done those, right? All right, number 30 is B as in boy. Does anybody got any questions? Check there. All right, no questions, I'm out.
Okay, real quick, just some quick housekeeping things. To the individuals that are on the webinar, the trained individuals told us that it's ready to take the test. Go on, take the test. Amber will mail out the packets. If you didn't already receive your packet, she'll mail that out to you along with the disc. We need you to fill out the MOA, the Memorandum of Agreement. Get either your supervisor, director, whomever is responsible for that, sign it, send it back into Amber, please. The certificate is on that disc. You also have the sign-in sheet that goes to Amber as well. So make sure she gets those. Also, since we've got new regs out, there have only been 2 classes that we've done that are considered approvable for teaching. And this is a same thing as last year. If you want to teach an older class for, you know, some installers that need makeup CEUs or whatever, if you want to do that, contact Amber at least 2 weeks before you want to do that class, so we can get you the upgraded and up to new reg presentation. You cannot teach an old class, send us the sign-in sheet, and then get credit for it. We've got to ensure everybody teaches correctly. So get that information to us. If you want to do an old class, we'll get you the updated version. You can teach it, good to go. We also have to know at least 2 weeks before you teach that class so we can let other installers know that you've got that option available. That is written in the Memorandum of Agreement. That's all that we have. If anybody's got any questions, you've got our phone numbers. Please give this class, and we've got a lot of installers that need makeup CEUs right now that do not have offerings. So if you want to do a makeup class, let Amber know, please. Thank y'all so much. Y'all have a good afternoon.
Thanks. Get this.
Yes. Drop